practice. Reckon they'll do better in the race. The leader for much of last year, of course, was the man who became the national touring car champion, the Queensland Falcon driver, Dick Johnson. He's not here today because he just hasn't got his new XE Falcon ready. It will be ready for the Castrol 400 at Sandown on the 12th of September, and of course it'll be ready for the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October the 3rd.
Well, there we have Alan Jones warming up the tyres, and number 41 comes down the back straight. Alan Brown, as we've found out, who is going to do the first driving stint in the Recar Mirage Commodore, and the pit road presently being removed of all the lovely girls who were there to add plenty of colour to the drivers while they were parked on the grid. So expect the drivers back this time. Here they come down the back straight. There's Terry Shield going through. Brian Callahan in 47.
One of the interesting cars, number 40, a similar car to this, with one number earlier. Peter Dane will be driving the RX-7. He and Peter McLeod are going to start on half tanks and soft rubber. Run only for 50 laps, make an early start and hope they can get a lead in the race. But they're starting from a bit further back in the field. They're in 10th place, but they'll be worth watching. Car number 40, it'll be light, it'll have sticky rubber, and it should be very quick in these opening laps. They're gambling, and that's car 40, the car to watch. Phil Alexander, one of the 5 RX-7s that qualified among the top 10 cars. There were 5 of these Mazda RX-7 Rotaries, 3 Commodores and 2 turbocharged Nissan Bluebirds in the top 10. The leading Falcon in terms of qualifying, Gary Wilmington's car, which qualified 14th, car number 8. Jim Richards was just ahead of him in the BMW, and it really is a reflection on how fast these cars are going when a car like Jim Richards' BMW 31 there on the right, the glorious German sports coupe, is outpaced by these other cars. That's a quick version of a very fast car, and yet he's back there in 12th place. It shows you how fast these other cars are going. Jim Richards has won Bathurst 3 times with Peter Brock. In the meantime, on the front row of the grid, Terry Shield just reversing back into place alongside Alan Jones. Jones in the dark red Mazda RX-7. So it'll be Mazdas on the front row of the grid, something we wouldn't possibly have imagined this time last year when it was very much a V8 scene. Here, the 2 leaders, Alan Jones. He's done it all before, just bring his car right up the last centimetre to the start line in car 41. Terry Shield alongside him. Alan Brown in the second row of the grid as they wait for the starter's flag to go. Phil Alexander, and then the 2 turbocharged Bluebirds behind, and some big V8s back further in the field. A total of 21 cars facing the starter, 10 seconds to go.
Field set for the running of the 1982 CRC 300 from Sydney's Amaroo Park Raceway. Flag is up. Gets down, they're racing and getting away smartly indeed was Alan Jones. He's won the start from Terry Shield. Alexander moving up very smartly indeed, and it's Shield now who drops in behind Jones, who will lead them over the top of Marlborough and down into Dunlop Loop for the first time. Look at the size of the field as they roar across the top of Marlborough, and it's Alan Jones who sets up the lead in the first corner of the CRC race for 82. Terry Shield dropping back into 2nd place. As they come down the backside of the course, Phil Alexander up into 3rd very quickly. Alan Brown is next in the Recar Commodore as they head down now for the first time to Honda Corner. And already it's Alan Jones putting a little bit of daylight between his rear bumper and the front there of the car driven by Terry Shield.
Alan Brown going very wide in the Recar Commodore. Went off, he had to come back on the track, which is a bit perilous for those going behind, and he's dropped 5 places. Went wide on Honda for the first time. No such mistake by Alan Jones. He's in front. He wants to stay there. He knows it's a long race. He knows it's going to be a very tiring race. 300 kilometres around Amaroo Park is very tough going, believe me. This will be a hard Sunday afternoon at Amaroo Park. Jones is away. Shields in 2nd spot. Jones comes over, settles the car through Bitchapave, down through Dunlop. That's Shield behind him. Phil Alexander going very well up there in 3rd place. Then one of the Bluebirds up there in 5th position. Jones opening a gap. You can see the margin yourself. Alexander hanging on well. Then the Bluebird.
I think probably the best of the Commodores so far being Ron Wanless. Bad luck for Alan Brown, who got a little off the circuit and has dropped back about 5 or 6 positions in the field. Will have to come back through the tack.
It's Fred Gibson leading the non-Mazda part of the race at the moment, just in front of Wanless. Alan Brown has made a lot of ground to come bring his car back up into the top 10. You can see the shuffling that's going on there through Whitfield Corner. It really is a crowded track at the moment. The slowest cars in the race are likely to be lapped within 7 laps of this circuit. Jones is the man who looks likely to do it first. Terry Shield in pursuit. Probably content to stay within sight. He knows that the race could be won or lost on pit stops. They're going to have to come in for fuel, probably for tyres. Not too important at this stage to go very, very quickly, but he can't afford to let Jones get too far away. Oh, there's a spin, and Alan Brown not having a happy race. That's the second time he's dropped distance. He had a spin at the top of the circuit. He won't be happy with himself. Nor will Alan Grice be happy back in the pits, saying, Alan, what are you doing?
That's cost them a lot of time. They're planning and running soft compound tyres and a small fuel load and a quick pit stop. All those plans have now gone out the window because Alan Brown has been in trouble on a couple of occasions in the opening 3 circuits and now trails the field by about a quarter of a lap. There's the traffic congestion. There's plenty of it, as you can see, all of them fighting for racing lines through Wonderlick Turn. But Alan Jones and the Darrell Lee entry going through Dunlop Loop, working down now towards Mazda Quarter and starting to extend that lead over second place Terry Shield. Phil Alexander is third, so it's a 1-2-3 for the Mazdas.
In fourth place, it's Freddie Gibson in the turbocharged Nissan Bluebird, and then comes Terry Finnegan in the first of the V8s. He's running the Commodore, and he's up there in 5th place in car number 15. John Duggan and Don Holland's RX-7, car number 42, did not start. It became very rough on the warm-up lap, pulled into the pits, hasn't emerged, and didn't take part in the start of the race.
And another one with a problem is Peter Dane, I think, in the Strongbow car, with hand up, signalling he may be coming into the pits early.
Well, he was proposing to be the first into the pits, but not on lap 3. It was to have been on lap 50. He went with a light load of fuel, with slick tyres, very sticky tyres, soft tyres as they call them. And he's going to the pits now, which has put paid to that tactic as far as Peter Dane and Peter McLeod are concerned in car 40. In the meantime, Jones is just circulating in front, doing it all right, going quickly, but oh so neatly. Just watch the way the world champion, in his first ever outing in a race in the RX-7, takes this car around, lifts the inside wheel. He's going quickly. Don't be fooled by the smoothness of it. Head bent forward just a little, a sort of determined posture by Alan Jones. Terry Shield trying to keep him in sight, but gradually losing ground to the former world champion. Phil Alexander behind him. There's Peter Dane in the pits, the Strongbow RX-7. Some trouble under the bonnet. One of the problems that afflicts all people who go there with the idea of sprinting is that they maybe go a little bit too hard, and Peter Dane has some problem there. And just as we have seen also Alan Brown running with a somewhat similar tactic, put the car off twice in the opening laps. When you're required to be a sprinter, it's terribly hard to stay on the track. Car number 22, Warren Cullen in the Commodore, the man who was sharing a car with Alan Jones at Bathurst last year. A dreadful exercise in terms of success, but Cullen, who is a talented driver, out there in his own right now and showing that he has what it takes. Chasing the Reed car around. There are a couple of them in this.
I think that's the Ron Wanless Rogers car.
Yes, car number 16. Painted the same as car 4, Alan Brown. Alan Grice will take over from it. Some of the lighter cars, the drivers, are intending to drive all the way by themselves.
That dice continues towards the back of the field. Meanwhile, Alan Jones continues to stretch his lead up to about 125 metres over Terry Shield. Probably 65 to 70 metres back to Phil Alexander, running in 3rd place at the moment. There's our race leader. Alan Jones wants very much to try and win the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. And he has a few options open to him, one being a Mazda RX-7 and the other a V8 Falcon.
One Mazda that's not going to win the race, I suspect, is in the pits. And it's over now to Gary Wilkinson.
Big problems early in the race for Terry Finnegan in the Triple M car. Terry, what's up?
Well, we use the same fan belt all year and put a new one on this morning, and this one's broken.
Looks like you've also got some problem here under the rear as well. What's that?
I think it's only the water flowing under.
Just the water flowing back, is it? Okay, well, there you are. It's only a fan belt, but they're the sort of things that can go wrong in a big race like the CRC 300. Bad luck for Terry Finnegan, but they hope to get the car back on the track and in action again shortly. I notice also that the Peter McLeod RX-7 with Peter Dane at the wheel is back in the pits for a very lengthy stop. We'll investigate that and get back to you.
Thank you very much, Gary Wilkinson. The gap between the leading car at the moment is 4.87 seconds. That's the lead that this man, Alan Jones, has over the second RX-7 of Terry Shield.
7 laps completed in the CRC Classic for 1982. Alan Jones on screen at the moment, driving the Darrell Lee West End Mazda. Poor Barry Jones coming out of Honda Corner, still pressing on. and doing it very, very quickly, and increasing that lead again over Terry Shield, driving the Eurocar's Valvoline Mazda, and then Phil Alexander still holding down third.
Well, who would have thought a year ago that we'd have seen Mazda RX-7 so dominating touring car racing? It's been a real turnaround in this last 12 months, and the portents are, as far as Bathurst is concerned, obviously Alan Moffat back there with his new RX-7, an even more developed machine, that we're going to have a great race among these cars, and some of the bigger and more fancied machinery having a real struggle to keep up. These are quick, these are durable, as we've known, and as Alan Moffat has been telling us for years. And Alan Jones out to prove the point on behalf of the whole contingent of Mazda RX-7 drivers.
And who would have thought even a week ago that Alan Jones would have been at the wheel of a Mazda for this race? His entry was confirmed, driving with Bob Morris in their new Ford, but in an amazing situation earlier this week, some deal was put together for him to take a look at the RX-7. He's only had minimal practice in the car to settle in, but you're as talented a driver as Jones, you don't require all that much practice.
Just imagine what he'd be like by the end of the race. He will be handing over to Barry Jones, the man who owns the car, who develops the car. He and his father do family business, and have been long-time supporters of Mazda, so it's good to see them out in front of a race. Barry Jones had to miss the last round here at Amaroo in July, an event won with consummate ease by Terry Finnegan, the man now, by Terry Shield rather, the man now running second. In the process, Terry Shield broke the lap record, which had stood to the credit of Bob Morris for a couple of years in the days of the old Tirana V8s. And that took some knocking off, because it's defied the attempts of men like Peter Brock, Dick Johnson and Bob Morris himself in later cars, and yet Terry Shield outdid it. And now Alan Jones leading the lap record holder, and if you like to put a bit of money on a sure thing, I reckon it's fairly likely that Alan Jones will emerge as the new lap record holder, unless someone else does it, but the lap is likely to go.
We have Larry Perkins.
Yes, in 05, running on behalf of Peter Brock. In the meantime, let's go back once more to the pits where Gary Wilkinson has Alan Grice.
Well, you know the old story about the best laid plans. Gricey, what happened out there?
It looks like up the top of the hill, around over the top bitumen pave, before you come to the loop, that Alan became involved with another car and was spun off. He is certainly dead last at the moment, but the car's circulating well. The times are average.
Well, it's only only a 20-car field. It is 155 laps. Is the situation retrievable?
Oh, certainly. No question about that. We're behind the 8 ball at the moment because we happen to be running last.
Okay.
But it's most certainly retrievable.
Alan Grice, a man who doesn't give up. Not certainly today for the Recar Commodore. He reckons they're still in there with a chance. We'll find out as the race unfolds in the CRC 300.
No doubt about Alan. Always liked playing long shots.
Well, it is a long race, and it's quite possible, but he will need to have somebody else have some trouble. You can't give Alan Jones a start in a car as thoroughly developed as the Barry Jones Mazda, or Terry Shield, or Phil Alexander, or the others who are up there. Jones going hard. Can't be too concerned about tyre wear. He's able to run the widest possible tyres, the same width that is available to the big V8, so he's got an advantage there. Let's just try and put ourselves into the driver's seat and let Alan Jones himself tell us what he's thinking about as he runs in this race.
At this stage of the game, I'll be just playing it very much by ear and waiting to see how the other people are shaping up tyre-wise and car handling-wise, and seeing if the handling characteristics of the cars around me, and mine included, change with the lightening of the fuel load. If I can make a break, well, that'll be so much the better, but if I can't, well, then I intend very much by just playing it to ear and driving according to what's happening around me.
Well, he's certainly driving according to how it's happening around him, because he has nothing around him to challenge at the moment. He's got a very good lead established over second place Terry Shield, and pressing on probably as hard as that RX-7 will run. It's been punched along by Alan Jones. Barry Jones, as Evan has mentioned, will take over at about half-time. Terry Shield, meanwhile, hopes to run the full race by himself.
So it's Alan Jones leading the race. In second place, Terry Shield, also in an RX-7. In third place, car 35, Phil Alexander in another Mazda RX-7. So it's Mazda's 1, 2, 3. In fourth place, car 56, Fred Gibson, the man who won Bathurst all those years ago, drove for Ford, now drives for Nissan in the turbocharged Bluebird. And in fifth place, and the first of the V8s, car 22, Warren Cullen in the Commodore, just in front of car number 16. which is the car of Ron Wanless from Queensland, with Gary Rogers sharing the driving with him. Behind them is car 11, which will be Charlie O'Brien, the Queenslander, who ran last week at Calder in Cornwall Pacific, sharing a Commodore with Clive Benson Brown from Tasmania.
Well, there's one in problems.
Indeed. And
that's the second one of the recars.
Barry Lawrence and Jeff Russell's car from Queensland spun out into the dirt. You can see how the front's been deranged. The wheel, yeah, no, he's had a bump there. The wheel is bent badly. It's not just bodywork, but the front wheel has been torn out. You can see he had an impact there, possibly with another car. Trying to get it going. He's not going to, well, he's going to try and get around, but he'll be shedding fiberglass, tree stumps, and goodness knows what else is caught up under there as he tries to go around.
Yes, I'd say that's not handling. That might be the best place to leave it for the remainder of the afternoon.
Oh, you can sense the frustration. He's trying to get that car back. Doesn't realise the mortal wound that the car has suffered in the front. You can see how the front has been torn. Mudguard loose, front loose, and the wheels not pointing where they should. Just not connected to the steering wheel anymore. Bits of fiberglass down the track as the rest of the field still keeps going round. And as he sits there watching that happen, Barry Lawrence from Queensland knows that his race is well and truly run. Jones now lapping cars. Lap 14, he starts to collect them. He has a lead of 8.2 seconds over Terry Shield. A slight bit of flame from the back of the rotary, that's normal. The engines that Barry Jones has been running are based largely on American technology, where a lot of people, particularly on the West Coast, know a lot about these Mazda rotaries. He's been getting some of his information from there. Alan Moffat visits the Toyo Kogyo factory in Hiroshima quite regularly, but he too gets a lot of help from the American side of the operation, where they do specialise in preparing these cars for competition with brilliant success, not just here in Australia, but running in the sports car and GT categories at circuits like Daytona, outpaced by the big Porsches, but they do well because of the reliability they get. Alan Brown just being passed by Alan Jones. It's the Alan show, but the Jones is going a lot faster than the Brown. So Alan Grice's hopes of seeing them catch this car don't look too good when they've already been lapped, having had a couple of offs. Now, obviously on the track, not as quick as the peripheral ported RX-7 of Alan Jones, and Jones just so neat. Takes the car out close to the fence, but not too close. He's got a little bit of a safety margin there in case he strikes the slippery bit. Just watch the way he goes around. A perfect line. The car is not being punished. It's going quickly, but it's not being handled severely at all. No great stress on the tyres. Slides a little bit, but he knows he can put a little bit of slide into this rubber because he's got big, wide tyres, as wide as the V8s, with only 2/3 of the weight.
And that's certainly on a winning streak too at the moment, after a great outing at Calder last weekend, winning both heats of the GT Championship down there, and of course back to step into a Mazda for the first of the endurance events.
So Alan Jones starting to lap the field in these first laps of the CRC 300. An awkward time in the race because many of the drivers he'll be overtaking won't be expecting to be lapped quite so soon. They'll certainly be watching their mirrors, but they'll expect to see the conventional shapes of the cars that have been behind them all the time. Terry Shield doing the same sort of thing, passing John Craft and Barry Seaton in the Capri. Now, Barry Seaton, the man who dominated 3-litre motor racing here at Amaroo for so many years, indicates the great development that's taken place among these rotaries. One time, the Capris used to knock them off quite easily, always beat them. But now, Barry Seaton and John Craft in their Capri qualified last on the grid. And who would have believed that?
Terry Shield comes down into Dunlop Loop. We spoke to Terry earlier in the day about how critical the start would be between himself and Alan Jones from the front of the grid.
Tell me where to go. Winning the start's very important. If we're having to be second into the first corner, it's not such a big thing because it is 300 kilometres, and I think we can just sit back and see what sort of pace is being set and perhaps make our move later in the day when the opposition's cars just aren't quite up to scratch and perhaps just a little bit slower than what they should be.
Terry Shield, his thoughts.
Pretty wise words too, Mike. He's running second, which is almost as good as you can get. Just watching some fairly desperate cornering there by Terry Finnegan, who'd been in the pits and lost a lot of time and trying to make it up in a hurry, I'd say. But Finnegan's running a good race. Alan Jones and the other RX-7 has been quicker and has drawn away. They now have a lead of something in the order of 9 or 10 seconds. But he knows that can all be lost in a slow pit stop or some sort of trouble. and he'll be happy to hang on there and just see how he goes. In the meantime, Alan Jones is slipping on the inside of Murray Carter. There's Jim Richards, who will drive solo. One of the few drivers who have elected to go without a relief driver. It's a very punishing event. You want to be a pretty fit fellow. I think Jim Richards qualifies. A man of great endurance, a man used to long races, a man who cut his motoring teeth in rallies in New Zealand where they have some pretty hard and long events. So he's used to driving long distances. Beautiful looking car. He'll have a new machine for the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, which is a car that he and David Hobbs will share. A thoroughbred machine that, but just outpaced by some of the more specialised racing machinery we have here, the RX-7s and a few of the Commodores. Qualified in 12th place on the grid.
Very hard to come from that far back on the grid, but still they're in the middle of development, and they couldn't have a better driver than Jim Richards.
It's a car that's been certainly proven, the BMW range generally in long distance events in Europe. They do shine in the longer races.
Oops, Brian Callahan sideways. Murray Carter managed to go past him. It was a very touchy moment there.
They're just in front of Jim Richards, and there's a real battle of the Falcons there. Gary Wilmington, talking to Falcons, qualified his car as best of all the Fords. He's just ahead of them on the road now. So the three Falcons in the race with a chance of success are all running about the same area, and Jim Richards in the black and gold BMW is in the middle of the sandwich. He's there with a good view of the action that goes on, just watching the scrap between Murray Carter and Brian Callahan right in front of him, and young Gary Wilmington from Victoria just in front of them.
Jim Richards going through Dunlop Loop, working down towards Mazda Corner at the moment. Brian Callahan, the driver, he is following, and number 47, the Ford.
Jim Richards, who'll have David Hobbs, the Englishman who lives in America. They'll be carrying one of the cameras that Seven will have in cars at Bathurst this year. And so Jim Richards will be a voice you'll become familiar with David Hobbs. The BMW, the other camera will be in the car of Peter Brock. The new 05. There's the Phillips lap score, which shows you how they're standing as of lap 20 in the CRC 300.
CRC 300 from Amaroo Park, 23 laps into the race, and Alan Brown is in the pits, and it looks like perhaps a driver change, and Alan Grice will now step behind the wheel. Let's go down to Gary Wilkinson, who's in the pits.
Up with fuel to the brim, and I would say that Grice is probably going to try and run the rest of the race on his own. Can he do it without another change of tyres and without a further refuel? Time will tell, but a drastic change of plans for the Recar Commodore number 4, Alan Grice, now at the wheel and joining the race in the CRC 300.
Well, whatever the tactic, Grice is in for a very hard drive, and a disappointed Alan Brown, the man who owns the team, leaving there. He's had a couple of problems, was knocked off the track, had a spin, has lost time. They've had a bit of a problem there. You can see the tyre change has been necessitated by some excessive wear on the inside of the rim. Back to you again, Gary. See if you can have a chat to Alan Brown.
Well, Alan, that was a dramatic change of plans. Can you tell us what happened to you in those first couple of laps out there?
Well, I was a bit nervous for a start, but I got a bit cocked up the top there, and we had a bit of a get-together, and so left me behind. I think I just got a bit nervous, and everything was going wrong, you know, so I think it's better to come in and get out of it.
Well, the plan now is for Gricey. What's going to happen? Can he run the rest of the race on the fuel and tyres that he's got?
I think he might. Well, how many laps do we do?
Well, 23 laps down.
No.
I think he's going to have to make another change.
Yeah, I think he'll have to, yeah.
Certainly for fuel.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we bought for fuel for sure. Maybe the tyres are hanging on, I don't know, but it felt like I had a flat front tyre, but it could have been just me.
Well, some personal disappointment for Alan Brown, and a big job ahead for Alan Grice in the Recar Commodore.
Well, a very honest interview there, yes, Mike Raymond, a man who was honest enough to say, you know, I felt that I was nervous and maybe not doing as well, so I handed over to the man who's quick. But it's going to make it very hard for Alan Grice because he can't do it without coming in again, so he's going to have to make one more stop. So a big load ahead. In the meantime, Freddie Gibson in car number 56, one of the Nissan turbocharged Bluebirds. A man who won Bathurst way back in 1967 when he used to drive for Ford, has been helping Nissan in their development of this car. It's It's been a program that's had almost 12 months work put into it. The cars are becoming terribly impressive, and there are a few people around who reckon they've got a real chance of doing well in the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, particularly if some of the faster, more fancied and more powerful cars fall over, as has been known to happen at Bathurst. Let's see how important this race is, though, in the eyes of Freddie Gibson himself.
Well, this is D-Day as far as the Nissan Bluebirds are concerned. We've been doing a lot of development in the car, turbo work. We're running the race today as maximum boost, what we always run up here. The car's handling better, which is making this go faster, as the grid positions proved today. And the team will sort of run the cars both flat out, and both no team tactics, both go for broke. So to say, today is D-Day for us, really.
Freddie Gibson, one of the veterans of touring car racing in Australia, and at the wheel, as you can see, in car number 56, the second of the Nissan Bluebirds.
He's running in 4th place, Mike.
Doing well at the moment. Of course, Alan Jones in number 41 holds a 9.8 second lead over Terry Shield. 12.8 seconds, then back to Phil Alexander in the third of the Mazda Rotaries, number 35.
And here's Alan Grice out. New tyres, a full load of fuel. He won't be able to go terrifically quickly at the moment because the car is as heavy as it will ever be. And he's got to settle himself in. But one thing that two things Alan Grice has. One is he has great knowledge of the circuit. He lives here. He develops all his cars here. And the second thing he has is a huge heart. And that's going to be put to the test now because he's got a ferocious job in front of him. He's still got well over 100 laps to go, almost 130.
Not only being at the back of the field now, but also being in arrears with the pit stop as well, and with another stop at least to come. It's going to be very, very hard indeed for Alan Grice to be able to pick up that deficit and run with it. However, as you mentioned, if anyone can do it or make up the ground, it's Alan Grice.
You can see he was going hard through there, just bouncing and freewheeling that inside front tyre, just touching the ground occasionally. Not a bad way to save on tyre wear, but a bit hard on the other side. Oops, 22, had a bit of trouble for us. Warren Cullen, who was running in 5th place, he's hit very hard, gone into the side of the wall there. You can see the flag marshal. I think people who are coming know that there's a problem. The yellow flag there being waved with great agitation. Cullen is out of the car. He's abandoned it for the meeting. It's at the top of the circuit. Very difficult part of the track up there at Dunlop Loop. He's come in hard, the fastest part of the circuit. They come over the top very, very quickly. And Warren Cullen, for what reason we don't as yet know, has lost the car and clouted that wall heavily. Hasn't done tremendous damage. You can see at the moment the disappointment has left his face. He's doing some mathematical calculations, how much it will cost to fix, how long it will take. Will he have it ready for Sandown on September the 12th for the Castrol 400? That'll be going through his mind now. Not a lot of damage to the car, certainly too much to keep on going, but it can be fixed. That's not too bad. But bad luck for Warren Cullen. A talented driver, hasn't had a lot of luck, and of course suffered the ignominy of being bracketed with that disaster involving Alan Jones at Bathurst last year. If you want to do well in the race, do it on your own. If you want to get a lot of publicity for a poor achievement, put someone famous in the car and have them not have a good run. And that's what happened with poor Warren Cullen last year. Let's hope his luck improves for Sandown. Now decided to have another look at the car. Thinks it's probably safe. If someone came and joined him, he could be a fairly flattened Warren Cullen, but he's having a look under the car. It's just up this part of the circuit over the top where he's gone off on this next loop, which is a very difficult part of the circuit. Over bit you pay, the cars go quickly and they swing through a long right-hander. And he's had a clout into the wall and a spin as well. Murray Carter, one of the grand old men of motor racing, not only in terms of his own venerability, as he drove in the very first Armstrong 500 way back at Phillip Island, before most of us can remember. But he's grand in the sense that he's so highly respected and liked. He loves his motor racing. He always goes well. He has always carried the flag for Ford. And there are thousands of people here at Amaroo and many more around Australia who love him for that.
He's had a great scrap all day here at Amaroo Park with the other two Ford entrants, Gary Wilmington and, of course, Brian Callaghan. And there's Wilmington and Callaghan. They're trailing behind Murray Carter at the moment.
Murray Carter is in 10th place, Wilmington is 11th, and Callaghan is in 12th. That's the way the big Fords are running at the moment. Not too bad. Plenty of things could happen in the CRC. There are lots of miles still to go. Lots of pit stops, fuel changes still to take place on this race. So often it's won or lost in the pits. Whoops! Lifting the wheel up is, I assume it's Larry Perkins driving car 05, the Peter Brock car that Larry Perkins will share with him at Bathurst, or to be correct, the same number he'll share. It'll be a new car that the Marlborough Holden dealer team will have from Mount Panorama. And this exercise here today is taken to blood the second drivers. It's the Larry and Gary show. Larry Perkins, Gary Scott, and talking of Gary's, there's Gary Wilmington, another Ford peddler in car number 8. running in 11th place, just ahead of Brian Callahan, who in turn is just ahead of Jim Richards in the John Player Special BMW. Callahan and Wilmington having great old dice there.
Race lead, of course, still held by Alan Jones, stretching it to 15.5 seconds over Terry Shield, 11.2 back to Phil Alexander in third place, and then 14.5 seconds back then to Freddie Gibson in number 56, the Turbo Nissan. So at this stage, Jones, who won the start and opened daylight up, is increasing it now. He went from 9 to 11 to 12 and now up to 15.5. Let's go and check out the pit activity with Gary Wilkinson.
Well, it looks like this could be the end of the race for the Soundwaves Disco Commodore Car 11. Charlie O'Brien, you were at the wheel. What's the problem?
Yeah, it's just snapped an axle.
Snapped an axle. Well, is it repairable? Can you get out there again?
Oh, well, the car will be going back out, but I think after losing so much time changing it, I think Clive should hop in, have a drive, because the experience will be good for him for Sandown and Bathurst.
Been a lot of talk in this race about tyres and about other cars in this category not turning up. What's it been like out there?
Well, the bigger cars have certainly got a big disadvantage against the little ones, but I was quite surprised that after 5 or 6 laps we were running 7th from 16th in the grid, so people must have fell out or something.
Okay, busted axle, but repair work is going on. Clive Benson-Brown getting into the car to replace Charlie O'Brien, and we might see the Soundwaves Disco car back on the track shortly.
Thank you, Gary. Well, one of the main points of conjecture about today's meeting, the CRC race, has been the withdrawal of a number of the leading V8 drivers who opted for 12-inch rims to run on their cars, and at the moment the controlling body has not agreed to do that, so thinking that they were probably going to run 4th, 5th and 6th to the Mazdas, they've decided to opt out of the meeting and probably gain some security on some of the larger tracks like Sandown Park. One fellow that hasn't, of course, is Murray Carter, who we mentioned earlier, currently leading this bunch, including Brian Callahan and Gary Wilmington. We mentioned Murray briefly before.
He's just going through Dunlop Loop at the moment ahead of that group. Yes, the cars that aren't running here, we've got notable absentees. Kevin Bartlett with the Chevy Camaro. He elected not to run because he can't get the proper run and not allowed to run it. Bobby Morris with his new Falcon XE has decided he will give it a miss. There's not much point, he thought, in bringing out the car when it can't run properly. And John Goss in the Jaguar XJS, who felt he also needed the bigger tyres that at the moment he is not allowed to use. But a fellow who is running, as you were saying, is this man, Murray Carter.
Murray, there's a lot of Mazdas here, a lot of smaller cars. The big boys have stayed away except for 1 or 2, and you've always been one of the brave ones. How are you going to get around this long race, and what about tyres?
Well, tyres have been a problem for some time with us. We're pursuing a wider wheel which will accommodate the tyre more satisfactorily, so that is a problem we have to bear at this stage. The Mazdas are going brilliantly, so they're a challenge in their own, and on a circuit like this they certainly have the advantages, but all we can do is persevere, tolerate the problem we've got, and just keep the pressure on and see where we finish when the time comes. The Mazdas, I must admit, are putting in extremely quick times. I would assume they're doing them on qualifiers. We've been circulating on our race rubber. We find the car is fairly stable, and we're quite happy with the performance. So hopefully if we can go the halfway mark, refuel, change tyres, and then attack the last half just as competitively as the first half.
Says it all, does Murray Carter, out there and running in car number 18, still well and truly in the hunt in the top 10 at the moment.
Still leading the race, car 41, Alan Jones, world champion back in 1980, leading in the Barry Jones Mazda RX-7. From car 37, Terry Shield, also a Mazda RX-7, and car 35, Phil Alexander in another RX-7. Then car 56 in 4th place. That's the turbocharged Nissan Bluebird of Fred Gibson, a great performance by him. And then 1 lap behind, and in 5th place, car 16. Car number 16 is Ron Wanless, who is sharing with Gary Rogers in a Holden Commodore. And then a car we haven't seen much of, except for one very brief outing onto the edge of the track, car 05 for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, with Larry Perkins driving. Up there, he's moved his way through the field, and Larry Perkins has done very well to get up into 6th position. He's just ahead of car 55, which is the second of the Nissan Bluebirds, the turbocharged model, with George Fury, former rally champion, driving, and car number 30, Tony Cavich, with Phil Ward having the first spell in his entrance car, the RX-7. Car number 18, is Murray Carter, the man we just spoke to, or heard speak to us, who's ahead of car 8, Gary Wilmington, and they are the leading 2 big Fords at the moment.
Here's the scene as we follow through with the completion of 36 laps of this 155-lap CRC Chemicals 300 from Amaroo Park, and our race leader is Alan Jones. One part of the Jones boy combination today, of course, sharing the drive of the car with Barry Jones.
In 11th place, which I didn't go through, we have car 47, Brian Callahan, ex-Speedway driver, just in front of car 31, Jim Richards, in the JPS BMW, running in 12th place.
17.5 seconds, the gap between first to second. It's opened up 2 seconds in the last 4 circuits. Let's take a look at the Phillips scoreboard, which shows, as Evan has just read through, Barry Jones in number 41, the race leader. Number 37, Terry Shield, running in 2nd place. 3rd is Phil Alexander. Freddie Gibson is the next back in 4th. Number 16, of course, back behind them is Ronnie Wallace, as mentioned, and then 05, Larry Perkins. That's the scene in the CRC 300 from Amaroo Park Raceway near Sydney. We'll take a break and return with more of the action, including the pit stops.
Out on the track at the moment, Larry Perkins is driving 05 for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, and he's in about 7th spot at the present time. Peter Brock obviously is not at the wheel today. Peter, what's the story?
Well, it's a very good opportunity for Larry Perkins and Gary Scott to get some real good Bathurst driving under the belt, because driving around for 40 laps of private testing at a circuit's one thing, going in a race and letting to stroke the car along and something wrong's another. I just noticed it sounds like it's got a spark plug missing, so at the moment, just listening to it going past here. So Larry's having to learn to cope. The second thing is, of course, we have to be a lot more competitive come the Sandown meeting in a month or so, and be looking good at Bathurst. So we thought,
if the engine has gone off a little bit, are you anticipating an early pit stop?
Well, Larry's dropped off probably half a second a lap at the moment on what he was doing on 8 cylinders. We'll have a bit of we'll get to the stage where we don't have to stop again and put 4 tyres on, fill it with petrol, plug lead on, strap a new driver in, and the game plan is to go out for the last 100 laps and sort of put the pressure on Alan Jones and come through.
So, Larry Perkins doing the hard work today. It's cruising for Peter Brock.
Thank you very much, Gary Wilkinson, and also Peter Brock.
Well, if he's only losing half a second a lap and not doing any damage, there's no point in stopping, because he'd lose a minute or so just coming into the pits and having either the lead replaced or the plug changed. But Larry Perkins, a vastly experienced driver, a very modest young fella, comes from Cowangi in Western Victoria, has been in Formula 1, and this year for the first time he joins the Marlborough Holden dealer team, and he'll be partnering Peter Brock at Bathurst. When I was talking to him earlier today, I put to him that he has a lot of responsibility, and this is what he had to say in reply.
Yes, it's a big responsibility that Gary and I have got today, filming the John Harvey and Peter Brock shoes. We had a bad practice, but we can do a lot better than that. The Mazdas and the other small cars up the front certainly suit this circuit, but we think by the end of the day, if we have a nice tidy run, I'm sure we'll still be there, and it's the end result that counts, not practice.
Well said. But practice, of course, usually determines how competitive you're going to be in the race itself. And at the moment, Alan Jones is fully competitive, stretching that lead to now 21 seconds over Terry Shield.
The Marlborough Holden dealer team will have a new Commodore for the race. Alan Jones may be seen in this car. There's a good chance, I'd say, particularly if he does well today, that he will be sharing the Mazda RX-7 with Barry Jones at Bathurst rather than the Falcon with Bobby Morris. Only time will tell, and Alan Jones in the rather pleasant position, I suppose, of being able to make up his mind.
And not only that, the way that this deal was put together for Jones, or the two Joneses to get together for this race, and with limited practice, I think Alan Jones will be looking at the potential of this car, not only at Amaroo Park, but it certainly must be a very competitive proposition at Sandown, and certainly at Bathurst, following the great initial run there last year by Alan Moffat. It will be a great head-to-head, the Castrol 400 at Sandown Park, with presumably Alan Jones in the Darrell Lee car, and of course Alan Moffat.
What a crowd will be there. There were 60,000 at Sandown last year for the race, and with Alan Jones running either in this car or in the new Falcon XE, that figure could well be exceeded. Should be a great race on September the 12th. Bathurst, October the 3rd this year, the James Hardy 1000. Alan Jones still leading the race. 21 seconds is the most he has now. Just adding about a quarter or a half a second per lap just in these last few laps, which is a perfect sort of margin that he is adding to all the time. Nice, comfortable Shield that will stand him in great stead when he pulls into the pits to refuel. Maybe change tyres. I'll have a look and see how they go. So Terry Shield, the man running second, going very consistently, but 21 seconds behind him, knows that Jones has to make some sort of mistake, has to have some sort of trouble, or has to have a poor pit stop for him truly to catch him. Brian Callahan in the Falcon now being passed, and Alan Jones has lapped all but the leading 3 cars. Only Terry Shield and Phil Alexander are still behind, and he is lapping at 55.8 seconds per lap, very consistently, just going round and round, threading his way through the traffic, almost to within the 10th every lap, which is the sign of a great driver.
Keep in mind also that there will be a driver change. Barry Jones will drive the latter part of the race. When Alan Jones steps out of the car, Terry Shield hopes to drive the entire race himself. So the only chance he really has is picking up a considerable amount of time, at least half the present buffer of about 11 seconds during the pit stop.
Well, Barry Jones, of course, is no world champion. He hasn't raced overseas as far as I know. Inside Gary Wilmington, I hope Gary has seen him.
I don't think he has. He has now.
The one trouble with cars of the bulk of the Falcon, with cars of a considerably less size than the Mazda, is that the driver of the taller car may not see it, particularly when it's a darker colour, when the sun is shining in their rear vision mirror. And Wilmington did well to get out wide. He got a bit of a fright, I think, just at the last moment, seeing Jones come on the inside. Barry Jones will be taking over when Alan comes in to change. Barry Jones doesn't have the reputation, of course, of Alan Jones, but he is a great driver around Amaroo. He's a great driver of the Mazda. He has prepared this car, and he'll be circulating just as quickly. So Terry Shield can't expect to start hauling in Barry Jones when he takes over, because he knows that Barry Jones is just as quick as he is. Beautiful lines that Alan Jones is taking. Just watch the way he goes around there. So gentle on the car, yet so quick. The fastest man on the track. Pulling away from his opposition regularly, but not punishing the car in doing it. If you were to ask what were the greatest attributes that any racing driver would have, a champion driver, it would be concentration. Not flamboyant gear changes and other things, but be able to concentrate completely, totally, and never let up. The mistakes occur when people start relaxing, start forgetting, start thinking of other things. Alan Jones won't be doing that. His mind totally on the job at hand.
Well, he had a 21-second buffer over Terry Shield. That has dropped down now to about 19.5 seconds. Only marginal, but Terry Shield has made up a little ground in the last couple of laps. So there's many interesting facets of the CRC 300 still to unfold here at Amaroo Park Raceway near Sydney. Welcome back to Amaroo Park Raceway and to the CRC 300. Presently in its 49th lap here, and there's our race leader, Alan Jones. Terry Shield, we believe, has some problems, may even be heading to the pits. We'll check that out. Yes, there we have it at the moment with Terry Shield into the pits for a very, very quick pit stop. I think he's in a little earlier than one would have anticipated, though.
Yes, he wouldn't have been scheduled to have come in so quickly. Whether he has a tyre problem, whether he decided at the last minute to start with slightly a lighter fuel tank and see if he could gain some advantage. We'll throw to Gary Wilkinson and see if he can find out what's going on. Over to you, Gary.
Well, the jacks are up, the tyres are coming off on Terry Shield's car, and of course he's in second place in the race at the present time behind Alan Jones. 50 laps completed, and remember that Terry Shield is driving the entire race on his own. So he's taking a change of tyres here, a full load of fuel, and I guess he'd hope to complete the race from here on without another pit stop. I don't really know whether we're going to have a chance to get a word with him. Terry, how's it going?
Got a flat tyre, mate, bit of glass, that's all.
Flat tyre, bit of glass in the tyre, that necessitates this change. So I guess that he will still anticipate at least one further change later in the race to take on fuel. But Terry Shield trying to get this tyre fixed now and get back out on the track, because Alan Jones has an appreciable lead and he doesn't want it to get any further. And there Terry Shield, you can see, getting quite impatient with the boys. Get those tyres out of the way, get the jacks out from under the car. He's revving it up, he's ready to go. There goes Terry Shield, back into action.
What on one tank full of fuel. 105 laps is marginal. Terry Shield will be doing all sorts of mathematical calculations as he sets off in pursuit of Alan Jones. But it's Jones' race now. His nearest opposition has had to go in the pits with a flat tyre. And if Shield can go through in one hit, he may be able to drag this race back again, because Jones has to make a stop and then change over to Barry Jones. But that's bad luck for Terry Shield. But at least it happened at a lap where he may just squeeze out a whole tank full of fuel from the new load he's taken. He might just do it in one go, but it'll be marginal, and he won't be able to go too hard, which will affect the way he'll have to drive.
Phil Alexander, who was placed third in the race, now moves up to second. And I don't think it'll be too long before Alan Jones, in fact, is within striking distance of putting a lap on our second place driver, Phil Alexander. Alan Jones out in front. I suppose viewers around Australia would be well aware of the news from the practice for the German Grand Prix that Didier Pironi, of course, crashed very heavily in practice, has broken both legs and one arm. And just prior to the start of the race, Evan Green had the opportunity to talk to Alan Jones about the rumours and the hints that he may be going back to Formula One racing next year.
There's been a great deal of controversy this season about whether Alan Jones, who's done so well in the GT categories with the Alan Hamilton Porsche 935, might return to Europe and return to the world of Formula One racing. So let's ask the fella himself. Alan, there's been a lot of speculation about it, and it might be heightened by the upsetting news about the injury to Didier Pironi. He's obviously out for the season for the Ferrari team. You have been approached by Ferrari in the past. Do you expect to hear from them again because of the accident that occurred today?
Well, you never really know, Evan. One of the great things about Ferrari is their unpredictability. You know, having said that, I have no intentions of going back to Formula One. I have made my mind up that I'm determined to make mine one of the best racing teams in Australia, make it competitive, and to give excellent value to my sponsors. And to that end, I have a commitment, and so I'll be concentrating more on that.
Well, that's great news for Australia. So you're not going back to Formula One, and you are going to develop your racing activities here.
Yes, I'm going to try and, as I said before, develop, you know, what I hope will be one of the most successful racing teams in the country. And I feel as though I've got the nucleus of people around me now to give me the equipment. And I've got some very good co-drivers, and I think, you know, I'm in a position now to have a very good team, and that's what I want to do for next year.
Now, you've had some great results with the Porsche 935, but you've been subject to some unfair criticism. Even I have picked it up and heard the reports of, you know, 1,000 horsepower. Now, that's not true, you were telling me.
Well, I've actually heard up to 1,400 horsepower. My only sadness is that it's not true. In actual fact, the car is about 120 kilos overweight. It develops about 725 brake horsepower, and it's a 1978 model. So it brings it back into perspective a little bit.
Now, that's the Porsche 935. Peter Brock has been mounting some close challenges, although thwarted by unreliability. Would you like to see him really get that Monza going?
Both on and off the track, I might add. Yes, I would. You know, I think it's good for the racing. It's good for the formula. In fact, I'd like to see 2 or 3 more competitive cars there. That's what it's all about.
Alan Jones, thank you very much. And while we were talking to Alan, or showing that recording of that interesting conversation, denying that he's going back to Formula One, we saw some drama in the pits. Murray Carter with a fire under the back of the car during a refueling stop. Some petrol obviously had hit a hot part of the car and burst into flame. Quick action by the marshals put it out. Clive Benson Brown and the Commodore just behind also got some of the overspray. The car is still there. A few hectic moments in the pits there, but everything is under control. Murray Carter back out on the track.
There's the situation in the pits as we pick up on our race leader, and that of course is Alan Jones in number 41. The distance between Alan Jones and Phil Alexander is approximately 46 seconds. So he's becoming a rather dominating force in this race as Alan Jones. Terry Shield, with his problems of a tyre going flat, he thought after collecting some glass, has put him back into approximately 5th or 6th place, and he'll be coming back through the field towards the conclusion of the event. But any challenge that it may have had in mind went out the window when Shield has to come in, or had to come in early and change tyres. There's Jones coming down behind Barry Seaton. Barry Seaton, of course, back to racing for this event in a Capri, one of the men who dominated touring car racing in the small litre category here at Amaroo Park for many years. A very, very safe driver, one of the best respected drivers in touring car racing in Australia. But as far as this race is concerned, Barry Seaton certainly well off the pace today. Brian Callahan, we follow through. Gary Wilkinson has certainly been a busy man in the pits. We might take the opportunity to return to the pits and find out some more information relative to the Murray Carter fire.
Murray Carter looking a little worse for wear. Driver change. Rusty French now in the car. A little drama there on the changeover. Murray had a bit of a fire or something.
Yeah, we had a bit of a drama, a bit of fire, but the boys had it under control pretty quickly, so it didn't really cost us much in the way of time. A little bit of time, but nothing really to worry about, I don't think, at this stage. I think the biggest problem is the tyre deterioration rate.
It's bad?
We just got to have to drive accordingly to preserve the tyres as long as possible, even though we end up blowing a tyre.
Okay, and they were your instructions to Rusty when he took over, were they?
Yes, just keep driving, keep it all together and do the distance.
Okay, Murray Carter and his Falcon hanging in there in the CRC 300.
Thank you, Gary Wilkinson. Well, viewers could see the problem that existed up in the top part of the circuit with, I think it was Ron Wanless who spun in the Recar Commodore, and a very alert Alan Jones was just able to guide the Mazda through that wreck up there. We'll have a replay for you shortly of that. Meanwhile, Murray Carter's car, we've been following with Rusty French. That's the John Sands Ford entry. Appears to be either leaking fuel out the back of the car. Maybe they've overfilled the car during that pit stop, but it was graphically caught the last lap around. Rusty French continues in the second half of the race, driving the John Sands entry, and a wall of traffic in front of him, including Gary Scott, who has now taken over the car from Larry Perkins. That's the Peter Brock Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore number 05. The two cars fairly close together as they come up Bitchapay Hill. They take the Marlborough crest and now drop down into Dunlop Loop. Gary Wilmington just ahead of them. It's in the yellow Ford, and they're very close together, this bunch of cars. We'll follow them through as they come through and head down towards Mazda Corner this time. Wilmington there running a mid-track, and then forcing a passage on the inside of him was Alan Grice. And then, of course, back behind them, Gary Scott and the Marlborough Commodore. Back in the pits, of course, the number 30 car that also has run into some problems. The Cabbage Ward entry was mixed up in that shunt up at just coming out of Dunlop Loop that also involved Ron Wanless. And they're into the pits now trying to rectify the problem there and hopefully rejoin the race. There's plenty of drama now starting to creep into this CRC Classic. 59 laps into the 155 lap mini Enduro, $32,000 up for grabs, 10,000 to win, and there's plenty more excitement to come your way when we return to the CRC 300 from Amaroo Park Raceway near Sydney. Welcome back to the CRC 300 at Amaroo Park Raceway. 61 laps of 155 have been completed. Here's our second place driver, number 35. That's Phil Alexander. And just back behind him by no more than maybe 10 metres or 15 metres is Alan Jones. And Jones is coming up trying to put one lap on the second place driver in the field.
And that's after 62 laps in the race, Mike. That's not a bad performance by Alan Jones, is it?
Tremendous performance, seeing that he'd never stepped into the car. This is his first race in the car. And I think those going to the Castrol 400 might like to keep a lookout for Alan Jones once he gets used to this thing.
It's anticipated that Alan will do about 80 laps in the car, so all being well, Barry Jones should have a pretty handy lead when he steps into the car.
There's Alexander still holding down second place in the race and now zeroing in. Behind him is Alan Jones, the race leader, as they now start into their 63rd lap here at Amaroo Park in the 155 lap CRC Enduro. Just ahead of them, of course, is Jim Richards, and going wide that time was Alexander in number 35. He's enabled Alan Jones to go through on the inside, moved out of the way to let the faster car move through, and Jones has now put a full lap on the second place driver. He has not let off since this race started. The old Formula One thing. And that's when you start, you're supposed to be still driving as hard on the last lap as you were on the first.
That's the only way to do it, I suppose, if you want to be a winner every time out. And that's the Alan Jones philosophy, certainly, as he goes down through Winfield Corner. Once more, 63 laps, 64 laps coming up for him, and really putting on an awesome display of precision and power driving out there today in the West End Mazda.
His concentration has been tremendous. only a few laps ago, as viewers saw, an incident involving the Cabbage entry and also Ron Wanless, where they were spinning out, and he went between the wreck, and we've got another one, that's Finnegan, I think, in
it is, yes,
trouble.
the Triple M Commodore.
And it's bad luck. It's not really a good race for Terry Finnegan. He's been ultra reliable here during the Better Break series. This is not the place to stall it.
Well, after all year, as he said, they did a fan belt the first few laps. And now that spin-off there. So Finnegan has managed to get back on the track. There's Alan Jones, rather. Meantime, untroubled, although, as Mike said, some deft work on his part to avoid a couple of tricky situations. He powers up the hill again with 65 laps completed for him, and certainly not that stage yet for anybody else, because they're all one lap down on race leader Alan Jones.
At the moment, Alan Jones has 1 lap and 2 seconds on Phil Alexander at number 35. We might check out the pit activity with Evan Green.
A Mazda in trouble is the car of Phil Ward, who came into the pits with very heavy damage around the front wheel. Phil, what happened?
Unfortunately, we were. I was involved with another Mazda, and we were lapping a Commodore. I think Gary Rogers was driving, and he spun, and I thought he was going to spin off the circuit. And he actually did spin off the circuit, and then the car sort of whipped around and came back onto the circuit straight in front of me. And the brakes have been bad from about the 3rd lap, and I just couldn't pull up, and I ran in the back of his car. Actually, his car sort of rammed mine as I went by, and it's unfortunately bent the lower control arm and broken the front hub. But it's a bit unfortunate because we were running about 6th at the time, so...
Right.
Okay, thanks very much.
Fine, thank you, Phil. We've got another Mazda in the pits. This is the Alan Jones car. We'll follow there. Stop very closely. I've got the stopwatch going. Jones is not going to get out of the car. Barry Jones at the wheel with him. They're going to change. It is to be a driver change. The jack was blocking the door. Now they've got it open. The helmet has fallen out. The things they hadn't practiced. They've been there for 14 seconds. Barry Jones getting in. Everything okay so far? All right under the bonnet. They've checked for oil. Doesn't need any. The wheels are going on. The engine's still running. Barry Jones, the owner and preparer of the car, getting it ready. This is a critical stop. They've been in the pits for 30 seconds. Wheels going on. Back wheel is finished. Front wheel is finished. The mechanic raises his arm. I'm ready, he said. How are you on the other side? Fuel is going in. One more churn. Man having trouble with it. It's a bit heavy to lift over that. Lip on the back. The breaker system working out, refueling the car. Alan Jones helping to tighten up the seatbelts for Barry Jones. An important match for Barry Jones. About to enter the CRC 300 for the first time. About to go out. Alan Jones just giving a hand to get the jack out. Barry Jones away. They've been in there just over a minute. Alan Jones. The car been running well?
Terrific, no problems at all.
Well, that must have been exactly as you would have wished.
Yeah, well, I can't complain, that's for sure.
Hot work out there. You're covered in perspiration.
Yeah, it's a bit warm in there. I'd just like to send a big cheerio to Alan Moffat and hope that you're relaxing.
And Barry's going to drive the whole way now?
Yes, I hope so.
No problems with the car?
No, good as gold.
Great. Alan Jones, back to you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Well, during that remarkable interview that Alan Jones flying from the car, we have a slight problem. There's our race leader, and he's gone off into the rough. And that was Phil Alexander, who had taken the lead over while Barry Jones was in the pits. And he's run off the circuit, buried the car in the bank, and now it's Barry Jones who has gone through to take over the lead in the race. So what rotten luck for Phil Alexander.
He'll be kicking himself, really, because he'd presented himself for a golden opportunity, had presented itself to him with that pit stop, and Barry Jones taking over. Alexander had put himself in a position where it was going to be a real dice between the two, and slight mistake, and Barry Jones is the one that's laughing again.
Well, Phil Alexander tries to build up a little speed. I wouldn't think too much speed. He'll take the car back into the pits, hopefully. Check it out. You can see some of the dust blowing away from under the front spoiler as he heads on down towards the left-hander at Honda. Gets straight back into action, though, let me tell you straight away. And I would think would wisely decide perhaps to go to the pits because he's probably scrubbed up the tyres, the front tyres in a big way, leaving the circuit down into Dunlop Loop. They've completed just on 67 laps of the 155 CRC 300 Enduro here at Amaroo Park. There's the driver who was leading, and he doesn't go to the pits. He continues on. That's Phil Alexander. I would think perhaps has dropped a lap through being buried up in the top part of the course, and that would put Jones back into the lead. Down through the Mazda corner as we cover the back or straightaway area of the course here at Amaroo Park. Terry Shield still running, and moving up behind him is Barry Jones though, and the one splitting those two is Barry Seaton in the V6 Capri as they come down into Mazda. Oh, and a slight bit of bother. They're trying to put a lap on Barry Seaton, but now he finds the line down the outside of Seaton. And heading down to Winfield Corner, there's Barry Jones coming through the turn. Just ahead of him was Terry Shield. And that was a moment that maybe Jones might have been able to get around Shield and put a lap on him, but he was unable to do that because of that lapped car.
Well, I see Shield is back on the leaders board now in 6th position, so the early pit stop on his behalf may pay dividends in the long run, because he's now got to work away at the lead, although, as you said, a lap down, and that's pretty tough to get back around here at Amaroo.
Let's go to the pits and check the action there with Evan Green.
Here in the pits, an official has just advised me that they've noticed that Barry Jones, who took out car 41, the leading Mazda, hasn't done up his flame-proof driving suit. Now, he has to have the flap done up properly to keep on going. I'm about to walk across, tell Alan Jones of this, and get them ready in case the official insists that Barry Jones comes in. So I'll let Alan Jones know. He doesn't know as yet. Alan, we've just had word from one of the officials that they reckon that Barry hasn't done his suit up, and they're looking at calling him in to do up the central flap.
He has done his suit up, and I'd also like to see in the regulations where it stipulates what has to be done up. He's wearing the regulation apparel.
Maybe you could get someone to go up there and advise them, otherwise there may be a needless stop in the pits. The man's on his way. That's the message at the moment. We'll pause for a while, return in a few minutes with the action here at the CRC 300. And here in the Amaroo pits, Phil Alexander, having brought his car number 35 up in the second place, has come in, but you've got problems, Phil. What's wrong?
Yes, I experienced clutch hydraulic problems going over the top of the hill, causing me to spin. But we finally got it going and got it back in the pits with new tyres and an excellent co-driver. I'm sure he'll bring it home. Takiko car's really going well.
Do you have a clutch problem or not?
Yes, we do have a clutch problem. I would suggest that my co-driver is driving with no clutch whatsoever out there now. He's judging the rev the best that he can.
He can bring it home like that?
Well, Ronnie Gillard's been around for a long time, and the car's in fine shape otherwise.
Right, well, a tremendous burden then on Ron Gillard, driving the car that is running in second spot. Back again to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan. There's Alexander. It would be a very, very precarious thing to try and drive out the remainder of this race without the clutch. Trying to judge the revs and the selection of gears, and then have the problem of trying to get in and out of the traffic. Meanwhile, Barry Jones has gone around to put a lap on Terry Shield in the second of the Mazdas. And on screen at the moment, of course, is Jim Richards, number 31 in the John Plyer Special BMW. Qualified 12th on the grid, presently running
about the same area.
Probably 11th or 12th. And, of course, Jim Richards, fellow who has won Bathurst as co-driver with Peter Brock on a number of occasions. I would think, even in any circumstances, would suggest that the car is still going well. Wouldn't seem to matter to Jim Richards. He's one of the more unflappable drivers. Will tackle this 300-kilometre race. They know they were well off the pace yesterday. And Jim remarked that the only thing that really worried him, that the only problem they were facing is there were 11 faster cars in front of him. And that's how he condensed it.
Interesting. Here in the BMW too, he's had to stand in the shadow slightly, I think, of Peter Brock on previous occasions, co-driving with him to win the race, of course, but it's pretty hard to take the glory away from the number one driver in those situations. Jim is an absolutely standout driver, all on his own. There's no doubt about that. And he's going to show his worth as the races get longer in this BMW. Jim Richards, and really top driver.
I think we'll let Jim all for himself, really. We spoke to him prior to the start of the race about the game plan for this year's CRC, driving the BMW.
Jim, the race on paper looks like a dogfight between the Mazdas. You're back in the middle of the field on the grid. How's the car going, and how do you run the race from the middle of the grid?
Well, the car's going better than it ever has before. We're in 12th position, but I think there's only about 0.8 of a second separating about 10 cars. So on time-wise, we're not that far behind, but we'll be hoping for a quick pit stop and reliability for the whole race, and I'm sure that we'll finish a lot better than 12.
Tyres, a problem for the BMW around here?
No problem at all.
Jim Richards, the game plan. Moving around the outside of Jim Richards at the moment and putting a lot of pressure on him. Would appear to be the second of the recar entries. At the moment, though, the race leader is Barry Jones in number 41 in amongst this group, a very competitive group. They're having their own individual clash here, and he's moved up to the tail of the recar Commodore, the one driven by Alan Grice at this stage.
Grice's in 8th spot too, by the way, and that's not a bad performance having taken over from Alan Brown when the car was at the rear of the field.
Be interesting to have seen if Alan had started the race rather than Alan Brown. Oh, a brake, severe one, lock up a time from Grice. That got Barry Jones onto the brakes in a hurry, and he's given him a wide berth as they race down towards Winfield Corner, trying to set him up for a very clean pass.
The two teams that tried that tactic of a light fuel load and the second driver in for the start have both come unstuck. Peter McLeod's Mazda only survived a couple of laps, and it's out of the race completely. And of course, Grice now having to do it. Oh, hello, 37, Terry Shield. Goodness gracious me, he's lost a wheel.
Yes, he has too.
Left front gone.
In a very bad position.
Right on Masterton Holmes corner there. It's a very delicate situation.
Well, there you can see the car swinging very, very wide. That leaves you no room at all if they're still racing each other down to Shield, because there's only that unforgiving concrete wall on the outside.
It's a hard corner at any time, that Winfield corner, that very hard right-hander there. And with Shield right on the apex of the corner, it's going to create problems. Just as well, there's no major traffic behind him immediately. The bunch that we had dicing earlier involving Grice and Murray Carter and has broken up now, and they've spread out a little bit more, but just as well we haven't got 4 or 5 cars dicing around that corner.
Here's this interesting clash continuing with Alan Grice. Barry Jones is trying to find a way around, but Grice is really going quickly. Has been the last few laps.
If he gets by here, this would put 2 laps on him, wouldn't it?
Yes, and that would not be a good position to be in, although Alan may be able to improve on his 8th placing at the moment. There's no way that he's going to get on terms with the race leader, who's presently trying to put a lap on him. The Gracie's taken over after the unfortunate incident that put Alan Brown back into the pits, scratching his head and wondering whether or not he really should have started the race in the first place under a ton of pressure.
Interesting, neither of the Bluebirds have come into the pits yet.
No, they're running beautifully. George Fury running in 2nd place at the moment, and Fred Gibson in 3rd. So we've got the Mazda RX-7 leading outright with Barry Jones at the wheel. 55 running in 2nd place is George Fury in the first of the Turbo Bluebirds, and then Fred Gibson running in 3rd in the 2nd Bluebird.
And I should have mentioned Jim Richards too in the BMW, also yet to make his pit stop. So we've got 3 cars in there that are driving solo, and of course they want to try and make the halfway mark, which is, well, we've actually just passed it, haven't we?
Yes, we're 3 laps over that as we work into the last half of the race. Still Barry Jones has taken the car over with a very, very big build-up in the lead, established by Alan Jones. But he's caught up amongst some of these cars that he's attempting at this stage to put a lap on. One of them is Gary Wilmington, who moves to the outside. Now Jones flicks back on the inside of him and will take him under brakes before Winfield Corner, which he does, then tries to swing out wide to miss the Terry Shield car that's still positioned down there. And just ahead of him is Alan Grice, who is not buttoned off at all. In fact, Grice pulling away a little bit as they come up the top of Bitchapave Hill one more time.
Gary Wilmington in there just behind that pair as well. Heading up and over the top of the hill. Barry Jones now at the wheel of the West End Darrell Lee Mazda. Alan Jones having given him
a really handy situation when he took over at the end of 62 laps. But he's having a little bit of a dice here with Grice, if you'll pardon the poetic license. Grice lifting a wheel as he goes around the corner there.
They're coming down now to Winfield Corner. You'll get the angle of our next camera change.
Oh, look at that.
Because they've still got this car parked on the inside there, and that's forcing Grice very wide indeed. There's the number 8 car, which of course was the Mike Griffin, Gary Wilmington car. And now it's Barry Jones who puts a lap on Alan Grice.
Another lap.
Further increases his lead over the field here in the CRC 300 at Amaroo Park. Well, Mike Griffin, of course, is driving the Gary Wilmington car. Gary's in the pits, and Evan Green has him handy for a quick interview.
Into the pits in 4th place is Gary Wilmington, leading Ford and leading V8. Any problems with the car, Gary?
No, none at all. The car's going brand new.
Let me just move you over, else you'll make it the name in the plate. As Jim Richards brings the BMW in for a pit stop. A very quick stop, Sam. There's no worries at all.
No, the tyres are good, the brakes are good, the whole car's spot on.
Okay. A lot of pit stops going on. Thank you, Gary. We're back in a minute. We'll just look at the BMW stop right alongside here. It looks like a scheduled change. Jim Richards is not going to leave the car. They're adding a little bit of oil to the tank up under the bonnet. Mechanics checking underneath the car to see if things are okay. They've slipped a container of fruit juice in for Jim to take it, because you can be sure he'll be a hot driver there at the moment. I won't get in their way. There's just too much going on. A tyre change, the tyres being changed. They don't look too bad, the ones that are coming off, but there's time to do it, so they're replacing the rubber to be on the safe side. One of the slicks going over the fence. The beautifully outfitted JPS team here carrying out the change with a great deal of precision. Frank Gardner, the mastermind, standing in the background, making sure things are okay. I'll try and have a word with him when I won't get in the way of Jim Richards, though, because he's on his way. A quick word with Frank Gardner. Everything okay, Frank?
Yeah, it's all right, Evan. Yeah, all running quite smoothly, no dramas. Just not quick enough. I think we've just got to get a rickshaw or something.
What are you going to get for Bathurst?
A brand new 635, hopefully, and that's like running about a 4-year-old Commodore. You wouldn't be that competitive, and, you know, that's a 4-year-old motor car. It's well driven by Jimmy, but it's 4 years old, and we just need a new car, which we're building up for Bathurst, and that should be the thing that'll bridge the gap for us, hopefully.
Can you win there?
My goodness, I'd hate to think we were going there to waste our time, Evan.
Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan. Very straight and curt answer from Frank Gardner.
Yes, he never minces words, Frank, and he's quite right about Jim Richards driving superbly, but the car just doesn't have what it takes, and a new car is in the building. In fact, he's quite right, they have started work on it, and of course they're going to have their work cut out to get it finished and get it sorted out in time for the big race, but as Frank said, they ain't going there for nothing.
Exactly. Someone that's going somewhere in a hurry and heading for a payout of somewhere around $10,000 from the $32,000 purse for the CRC race is Barry Jones. Number 41, the Darrell Lee Chocolates West End Mazda sponsored car. Increasing his lead, coming up Pitcher Hill again. Driving superbly. A slightly longer pit stop than I think they had really worked towards. They were working on 46 seconds. It was well and truly over a minute. And their practice pit stop this morning was 48 seconds. So they had plenty of time to play around with. That was made a little bit easier when Phil Alexander, of course, went into the rough at the top of the hill.
And the Bluebirds are in second and third places now behind the Jones machine. Fred Gibson holding down second place in car 56 and car 55, driven by George Fury, both of them turbo Bluebirds, holding down second and third place. And Alan Grice is now in fourth place on the track, having come from stone motherless when he took over after 21 laps at the wheel of the Recar Commodore number 4. Now that is some performance. I know he's a lap plus down on Barry Jones, but still great performance and great racing yet to come here at Amaroo Park in the CRC 300.
Driver not competing today, who was due to run the 7 Falcon, is Bob Morris. Bob, why aren't you running?
Well, mainly because we think that the regulations governing these cars don't allow the Falcons an even chance against the Mazdas and the Datsuns on this circuit.
Because of tyres?
Well, mainly because of tyres. We don't have a rim width that's suitable to the tyres that we have to use on the Falcon.
You were to run also with Alan Jones at Bathurst, but he looks pretty happy out there in the Mazda. What happens if he elects to run in the Mazda? Who will you have as your co-driver?
Well, at this stage, Alan and I are in it at Bathurst, but you know, this was a last-minute thing because he wanted to run here, and we decided that a Mazda would be the best car to win this race, and so he got himself a drive in a Mazda. Perhaps we'll have a talk about it tomorrow.
All right. While we're talking, let's spend 1 minute on this exciting part of the circuit, just watching how cars come through Wunderlich, and have Bob Morris, a man who's won Bathurst, just tell you what's going on, who's in the cars, what they're doing, and what story he can read from the way the cars are handling. First of all, Brian Callaghan in the Falcon.
Well, this is Bob Muir, who's taken over from Brian Callaghan. He seems to be driving the car quite neatly. That was the Works Datsun, who's going very well. They're looking after their tyres. They're driving nice and straight.
They're up into second and third place, which is remarkable.
Well, it's a fantastic effort. As yet, neither of them have made a pit stop, we have to remember, but they're conserving their tyres, and it's very important on this circuit to conserve your tyres. Here's the second Works Datsun. And then French in the Falcon. He's slipping and sliding a bit. Here's Barry Jones, who's taken over from Alan Jones. He's virtually coasting around. He's looking after the car, looking after the tyres. The small cars on this circuit can drive very straight. You see the big V8 cars there. Sometimes they're leaving strips of rubber as they accelerate from the corners, and they're slipping and sliding. There's another Commodore.
It looks a harder job in the bigger cars as we watch George Fury come in again, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly is, because you have virtually twice the weight on the same size wheels that the smaller cars have, and so this is why we consider that the bigger cars are at a distinct disadvantage on this small circuit. Perhaps not so at Bathurst.
Bob Morris, back again to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Bob. I think Bob was hedging his bets. Heading down to Winfield Corner again, Barry Jones, number 41. I tell you, I'd like to be at the confrontation tomorrow morning when Bob asks Alan
what he's going to do at Bathurst.
You think you're going to help me co-driver forward? And he says, what did you say, Paleface?
We ought to point out that as we see Barry Jones on screen in the West End Darrell Lee Mazda, that Fred Gibson in the Turbo Bluebird is now in fact on the same lap. But remember, of course, that the Bluebird car 56, driven by Fred Gibson, who's driving the race all the way on his own, has yet to make his pit stop, and he's going to have to make it pretty shortly because they've got 90 laps completed. I've got the stopwatch on the gap between Barry Jones and Fred Gibson at the moment. It is fairly substantial. In fact, it's substantial to the tune of about 48 seconds. And he does have to make a pit stop, so you know, there's no way he's going to bridge that gap in the immediate future. But a great performance by both the turbo cars, because the other turbo, George Fury's car, 55, is running in third place.
They were terribly competitive here in the final round of the Better Break Series. I think even more competitive today when you consider they're in second and third place. And it only needs something to go astray with the Barry Jones car, and you're going to find a very competitive turbo Nissan there with Freddie Gibson at the wheel to put the pressure on. He has not had a lap put on him by our race leader Barry Jones, still on the same lap, but keeping in mind, as Gary said, still a pit stop in the win for 56. Freddie Gibson, and of course the second of the turbo Nissan's 55, driven by George Fury. A remarkable little car, and I think we're going to see plenty of fireworks from the turbo Nissans come the James Hardy 1000 Classic in October.
They are, in fact, the only two cars really in contention that haven't made a pit stop yet. We've seen Jim Richards in the BMW. We've seen pretty well everybody else, I think everybody else in, bar those two cars, and they're running second and third.
Alan, or Barry Jones rather, is not that far in arrears, probably 3 or 4 seconds back behind Freddie Gibson in car number 56 as he drops down into Dunlop Loop, takes the right-hander and heads on down towards Mazda Corner.
We heard Bobby Morris talking to Evan Green just a moment ago about that tyre situation, the rim width with the big cars. Of course, some people may not know, Alan Moffat, who's not racing here today, has submitted an application for homologation of a new diff for the RX-7, which will allow them to run wider rims and bigger tyres. Now,
so it goes on.
So it goes on. You change the rules for you and I'll change it for me.
I believe that it's untrue that someone wants to enter an FJ Holden with a turbo Pratt & Whitney in there as well. Well, we might check out the activity in the pit area, and it's down now to Evan Green.
Alan Grice in car 4 has been performing miracles. He's worked his way from last place to 4th and brought the car into the pits for a very quick pit stop. The man who started off and his team leader, Alan Brown, is there. Alan has got some problems. What are they, Alan?
Yeah, that's right. Since I got out the car, I thought I had a flat tyre after hitting the Mazda, and I was having all sorts of dramas, but once Gricey got in it on the radio, he told us he just can't handle. The car is just understeering so bad. Obviously, there's something wrong with the front-end geometry, and he's doing a fantastic job just holding on the track. He's really having a lot of drama.
So he's worked his way from last place to 4th
that's right.
with a car which has damaged steering.
Exactly, that's right. He's really going well, and he's out there now, and he just had another pit stop, and that's it for us. We'll just keep going and see how we go.
No more scheduled stops, then?
No way, no, that's it. The other car's coming up too. I think they're doing very well. Ron's out there now doing his thing. He won't be in either. He's out. That's it.
Race continues with Alan Grice, car number 4. We've already heard you've already seen the dramas associated with Alan Brown and Alan Grice, and what he's doing out there is quite remarkable.
It certainly is. 4th spot actually became 8th spot during that pit stop, but as Alan Brown said, that's the final one for them, and with the full load of fuel and with the tyres, they'll go all the way from here on.
Prior to the race starting, Alan Grice had a game plan that he made mention of, how they thought they'd attack the race. Let's think back to how it should have gone.
You've got two choices. You can either let the Mazdas go and come home, or you can take them on. What's the situation going to be with the Commodore?
Well, I think everybody's got the Mazdas starting as favourites, and they're surely entitled to be favourites. But I wouldn't rule out the Commodore, our Commodore, by any stretch, because I don't think enough people have taken into consideration the difference in effect the full load of gas is going to have on the little car as against the bigger car. The thing that stood by the Mazda and stands by it is its power-to-weight ratio is a better power-to-weight ratio than the Commodore. But that's with light tanks. If you put about 280 pounds, and that's what you're talking, in the back of a Mazda, I don't think it's going to perform as well as a Commodore with 280 pounds in the back of it. So whilst they still deserve to be favourites, I think we're in with a good show.
Well, by the time you check back at the time that we recorded that this morning to how things have panned out for Alan Grice now, probably they don't have a great deal of bearing. That's how it should have been. But he's done a remarkable job from the back of the field, picking up a car that is a little crippled, and he's been running with it, virtually manhandling the car around, because it has been handling anything but perfect since Alan Brown turned it over to him 10 laps or so into the race.
Meantime, at the head of the field, Barry Jones still going along quite nicely, and in fact extending the lead again over Fred Gibson in the Turbo Bluebird, car 56. Fred had closed the gap up to about 43.7 seconds at one stage. It's now stretched out again to 53 seconds, and I think Fred Gibson is about to come into the pits to make his pit stop, remembering that he and George Fury and the other Bluebird are about the only two cars on the track, I'm almost certain, that have yet to make their pit stops. In fact, there's Fred Gibson now, and our understanding is he's coming down towards Winfield Corner now. Just behind him, in fact, is Barry Jones in the RX-7, so he's almost got a lap on him. And this is going to have to be a really slick pit stop for Fred Gibson. Here he comes. He's coming into the pits now. And remembering, Barry Jones has just gone past and has now put a lap on him. And really, he's going to have almost 2 laps on him by the time this pit stop is over, if the pit stop goes according to plan. Let's see how it does go. Wheels coming off, and of course he must have those almost right down to the bottom.
Fred Gibson coming second. Fred Gibson running second in the race, in the pits there, refused to drink. Car running well, Fred?
Beautiful, Evan, no troubles at all.
Fred refused to drink. Howard Marsden had some orange juice, a straw, to feed it through the Darth Vader helmet. He waved it away, said, I'm okay, just look after the car. You heard him say himself, no problems with the car. Oh, that is a quick change, They're out in 33 seconds. Magnificent. Half a minute faster than Alan Jones has stopped, and that was an incredible change. There's a happy man over here, Howard Marsden. You'd be pretty happy after that, Howard.
Sebs, the boys have done a tremendous job. The whole team's working terribly well together, and we're looking forward to a good result for our first long-distance race, Evan.
Right, back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much, Evan Green, and to Howard Marsden. Obviously delighted, a very, very quick pit stop. It always ceases to amaze me, you know, of professional sport, thrusting a microphone under the nose of a rugby league player just as he's walked off at half-time or at quarter-time or whatever the case may be. With motor races, that they can come in, even with everything happening around them, and conduct a very intelligent interview.
I've tried doing it at tennis tournaments. It's not appreciated sometimes, I can tell you. But, well, that 33-second pit stop, you know, that puts Fred Gibson in a pretty good position. He was a lap down, and he could have lost another lap there, but 33 seconds puts him about a lap and a half, a shade more perhaps, behind Barry Jones on the track at this stage. And, of course, we've had 98 laps completed, still got 57 laps to go, so he's in there with the biggest show of any other driver on the track at the present time. We'll be returning in a moment to the CRC 300.
Ron Wanless in car 16 has just shed a back wheel and spun out. His co-driver is Gary Rogers. Gary, what would have happened?
Going by the look of it, Evan, I'd say it's broken a rear axle. It appears to have, just from what I can see from here, it appears to have taken the whole assembly straight out of the axle head.
A dreadful time of the race for a driver who has, like you, who has to stand on this side of the fence during the closing stages.
Oh, well, there's not much you can do about it, Evan, you know. I've done my bit, and to be quite honest, I'm glad I'm here right now.
Let me just walk around the camera, do a 180-degree loop, because right behind is Alan Jones, who's doing the same thing as Gary Rogers, watching what goes on in the race while his car leads with Barry Jones at the wheel. If I could just speak to Alan, what's the word from the car? What are you hearing from Barry?
Unfortunately, nothing. The switch on the dashboard that receives and transmits is broken.
So what sort of signals can you give him?
Well, we're just telling him how far in front he is and how many laps there are to go and all that sort of business.
And he's indicating no trouble with the car?
Well, so far so good. It's going like a dream.
How does it feel to be standing on this side of the fence when the race is drawing to a close and not able to do much about it?
Terrible, terrible. It's the first time I've done it. Normally I'm in the car. It's not horrible.
Horrible.
Here comes the man who's leading the CRC 300 from Amaroo Park, and that, of course, is Barry Jones, co-driver Alan Jones, standing in the pits, counting off the laps. But everything seems to be going perfectly for the Jones boys here at Amaroo this afternoon.
He's a minute 50 in front on the track at the present time, ahead of Fred Gibson, car 56, the Nissan Bluebird, then George Fury, car 55, in the second of the Nissan Bluebird, and Larry Perkins in the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore 05 is up into fourth place in the race at the present time, and holding down fifth spot is car 35, and that's Phil Alexander. I think Ron Gillard, in fact, yes, Ron Gillard is at the wheel of car 35, the RX-7 at the present time. And then comes Alan Grice holding down sixth place. So he dropped a couple on that quick pit stop, but he's making up ground once more. But a lap and 50 seconds is the leading margin for Barry Jones in the West End Mazda RX-7 at the present time. Coming back down once more into Winfield Corner. He's not far behind the BMW. There it is, Jimmy Richards in the BMW. But, of course, he has a lap and some on Jimmy at this stage. 2 laps, I think, in fact. Alan Grice not far astern of that pair at the moment. But, of course, a big difference in their actual positions in the race.
Moving into the final third segment of this race, there's Barry Jones, 41, Darrell Lee, and West End Mazda-sponsored RX-7. With a very big lead over the 2 Nissan Turbos driven by Freddie Gibson and George Fury. We'll follow car number 41, Barry Jones, down through the circuit, coming down to the left-hander now. Still trailing Jim Richards.
Margin between first and second at the moment. We've got a stopwatch on it to double check it at this stage, but it looks like a lap and about 45 seconds. So you're looking at the best part of 2 laps, a lap and 3/4. And a little dice going on here, although there's a lap between them. Nearly 2, well, there is 2 laps between them now. Well, is there? We'll see what happens when they go over the top of the hill.
I think Jim Richards will certainly let Barry Jones go. He beckoned him by on the straightaway. I think just wanted to see how good it was for power. Actually outgunned him up the hill. But Barry Jones goes past Jim Richards, well and truly out in front, 1 lap and 48 seconds in front, increasing that all the time. So things are looking good for the Jones boys. Barry Jones in the cockpit and Alan Jones in the pits.
Yeah, 1 lap and 49 seconds is correct.
Down along the short straight there to Winfield Corner, the tight right-hander, which has a very unforgiving concrete wall on the outside there, as you can see. A short straightaway up to Wonderlick Turn. Now the open straightaway that takes them up Bitchapave Hill again. So great things happening today for Barry Jones. Has been looking for a big win for a lot of the seasons here at Amaroo Park, and a very deserving win coming his way. He had a good lead built up by his co-driver Alan Jones, who elected to run the first segment of the race. And if he can protect that, despite the fact they have a problem with their two-way radio, but they're in a great situation at the moment where they don't really have to do too much talking. If the car continues to run as well as it's run from the opening circuit, keeping in mind we're now into 106 circuits of 155. The Jones boys, their first ever combination for a race, going to come home winners of the 82 CRC 300.
And of course there is further development yet in the Mazda RX-7s. Barry Jones and others are awaiting with interest the outcome of the Moffat bid for homologation of the new diff, and the difference that is going to make, and the extra latitude that's going to give them in development, because that'll start off a whole new round of applications for rule changes, however slight. Once one gets one, the next one wants it. There's a leaderboard you can see on the top of your screen at the moment. Car 41, 56. That's Fred Gibson in second place, as we said, a lap 49 seconds astern. Then George Fury, car 55. 05 is Larry Perkins in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore. Car 35, another RX-7 with Ron Gillard partnering Phil Alexander Gillard at the wheel at the present time. And then Alan Grice in the Recar Commodore number 4. That's Fred Gibson.
Freddie Gibson doing a good job in second place. I think this end, the factory team will be delighted with a second and a third in today's CRC 300.
I didn't personally see George Fury make his pit stop, but he obviously did. Nobody's seen him come in.
Well, if he hasn't come in, he's running it on water. And could probably walk on it too if he could do 155 laps.
There he is. And I mean, seriously, I've been keeping an eye on both cars with interest, and we saw Fred Gibson come in and make his stop. We heard his remark to Evan Green, the car was going great guns. But we haven't seen him come in.
At the moment, though, Fred Gibson holding down a very solid second place.
Yes, they've just done a switcheroo. Fury and Gibson is now in second place.
55 Fury, 56 is Gibson. Larry Perkins and Scott are the next place driver. Alan Grice up one. Phil Alexander is the next one on number 35, who would be running in sixth place. Now that's the top six for you. Now thanks to Ray Morris and of course the Phillips scoreboard service for Sevens Motorsports presentation. Keep you up to date throughout the afternoon.
That's after 109 laps. 46 laps to go in this race, the 1982 CRC 300, and it's certainly throwing down the enormous challenge to the bigger cars as we get into the long distance races towards the end of 1982. We've been talking about the challenge of the smaller capacity cars all season, and it's been developing all season, but it's really come good with a vengeance here today, although we must stress, of course, the absence of a couple of the bigger contenders. But they'll be back in action in future races, and it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the Mazdas in their present form. We'll be back in a moment.
Nissan team manager Howard Marsden has cars running second and third, which is the best overall result anyone could hope for. With two cars there, but do you propose bring them in again, Howard, or not?
No, we're out there to stay. The Jones Mazda is ahead of us by just over a lap. We can't catch him unless he has problems, but behind us nobody can catch us unless we have problems. So it's the endurance of the vehicles now, and we're hoping that our reliability will stand up as well as it is so far.
No sign of any troubles?
No, the boys are delighted. Freddie didn't even want a drink. George shouted at me because I didn't give him a drink, but apart from that, those are my major problems.
A pretty good indication then of a fairly interesting run at Bathurst this year.
That's what it's all lining up for. We've decided to try our cards at this particular race. We don't know what our reliability is. We're learning as well as the viewers at home. But if we go like this here at Bathurst, I think we'll be a nuisance.
A fairly effective nuisance, I'd say. Howard Marsden, whose cars are coming second and third.
Thank you, Evan.
Well, if Fred Gibson made his pit stop in 33 seconds, I'd like to know what George Fury made his in, because he was in and out so quick smart I didn't even see him.
And still holding down second in the race is George Fury, Fred Gibson in third, Larry Perkins in fourth place in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore. Then comes Alan Grice and Phil Alexander. But there we have George Fury in the number 55 Nissan Turbo Bluebird, who is presently placed second in the field.
Well, the leader is not far ahead of the Bluebird at the moment on the track. Barry Jones just going up Bitchapave Hill at the present time and about to come over the top. And he has a lead of a lap and 6 seconds. There's Barry Jones. A lap and 6 seconds ahead of the car we were looking at just a moment ago, 55, the Nissan Bluebird.
No problems for the Barry Jones team this afternoon. Still circulating very, very quickly indeed. They've eased off the pace perhaps just a little bit. They'd built up a lead of a lap, and it was up around about 14 or 15 seconds. That's dropped off a little bit, so still that lap is quite a lot. They still have as a buffer over the second place driver, George Fury.
Well, the lead is a lap and 5 seconds. So he's just nibbling away there, but a lap is a lot of seconds.
Here comes our race leader, Barry Jones, coming up behind Alan Grice, who is still running back there in fifth place. They drop down into Dunlop Loop. Grice doing a marvellous job of running that car. We've already been able to pass on to you the information the car has not been handling well all day, but Grice has certainly been manhandling the car around the circuit since he took over inside of 10 laps when Alan Brown ran into problems down into Dunlop Loop.
Well, that necessitated, I think, for them a total of 3 pit stops in the race so far. They don't intend to make another one. They would like not to have made one of those. Correct. But they'll run from here to the finish, despite the fact the car isn't handling well. And as you said, Alan Grice doing a remarkable job, having come from the rear of the field in the early stages. And although he's nearly 2 laps astern of that car in actual placings on the track, he's driven some hell of a race.
A good reliable run also for Larry Perkins and Gary Scott in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore, up to 4th. And then back behind them in 5th place, of course, is Alan Grice, who we mentioned, but he's quite a way back behind them.
Ricardo, Rusty French going through, Rusty French at the wheel. They had that little drama with a fire that broke out during their pit stop and refueling, but it was brought under control by the pit crew before the fire marshals could even arrive on the scene, and I can tell you they were there in about 5 seconds flat. So it was a great effort by the pit crew. They were very smart to move. There goes Jones making that passing manoeuvre going down into Winfield Corner. Leaves Rusty astern.
Jones completes one more lap, moving on to the 117th lap of 155 in the CRC 300 here at Amaroo Park, and not an insignificant payout, $10,000 for the efforts today. It might match Team Williams, but nevertheless have to be grateful for all small mercies. And I dare say Barry Jones would be delighted about the $10,000 payoff from a purse of $32,000 presented by CRC Chemicals. They've been very strong supporters of touring car racing here at Amaroo Park. Puff of smoke then from the number 41 Darrell Lee West End Mazda.
38 laps to go for that car. And as we said, leading by 1 lap and a touch. 3 or 4 seconds. I think this has spurred Alan Grice on, in fact, the fact that he can see Barry Jones in his rearview mirror. And, he's actually in terms of their current physical situation on the track, pulling away a little. But he'd have to pull away an awful long way to unlap himself. There he goes.
Back straight. Grice going through, and they're putting a lap, I think, there on the Clive Benson Brown and Charlie O'Brien Soundwave Commodore.
Game as they come, Alan Grice. And he'd have been here today with the bells on if he'd had to run on no wheels at all. No rims at all.
Whether they be 10s or 12s.
Yeah, and always provides great entertainment and a little pot stirring of his own.
Into the 119th lap goes Barry Jones now. 1:55 the distance. And the little Mazda goes to the top and drops down now into Dunlop Loop. Grice goes through and just guiding the car out carefully, not doing anything that would put him in a situation of being forced off the track with some of these slower cars is Barry Jones, the race leader. Grice still running away a little bit in this clash that he's had with Barry Jones, and trying to stay ahead so he doesn't have another lap put on him. We'll go to the pits now and check the action out with Evan Green.
I'm in the pits with Peter Brock in the Marlborough Holden dealer team. There's some anxious faces being cast at the watches. What's happening to car 05 with Gary Scott?
Actually, it's fairly academic, because I'm just trying to retain a bit of interest, you know, in the proceedings, because we're well and truly outclassed by the Mazdas and Datsuns. But we're in 4th spot, which is a pretty good effort for the lads. But we're being caught at the rate of about a second a lap by Alan Grice. And there's nothing very much that Gary Scott can do about it, because I know that he's been out there for a long time now and his tyres are sort of melting. We're just deciding whether we ought to sort of rib him in for a new set of tyres or just press on regardless. But as I said, it doesn't really matter at this time as far as the race strategy is concerned, because I think Grice is certainly going to catch him. And if we stop, he's certainly going to catch and pass us while we're in the pits.
Well, Alan Grice has a steering problem, so he too must be very doubtful about his tyres.
Yes, but he's still going quite quickly. I just noticed him as we were being interviewed and the camera went away there, that he went into what was Honda Corner, and he really had a very large front brake lock-up, and if he does that too often, of course, he'll get in for tyres himself pretty soon. But generally speaking, he's pressing on pretty well. I don't think we can catch the Datsuns, any of our cars. Just sort of hope they break.
When will you decide if you're going to bring him in or not for new tyres?
When his lap times really deteriorate. And we'll just ask him a question. Tyres okay, question mark. And if he goes, I'll just say.
What have been the most impressive performances here today, Peter?
Well, I thought that obviously Alan Jones getting out in the Mazda and running away, but we expected that from the Mazdas. We know that they're really in a class of their own around this particular circuit. I thought the other Mazdas would have been able to hold on in there, as at the moment we only got one that's still going okay. The Datsuns, I think, have probably been the big surprise packet, because everyone knows that turbocharged cars are a little suspect on longer races. And this, in fact, is their first endurance run, and I think you'd have to take your hat off to Howard Marsden and the boys there for preparing the cars so that they've, well, at this stage, it's not over, but lap 121, they're sitting in 2nd and 3rd spot. They're sounding sweet as a nut, and that, to me, is probably the most impressive performance here today.
Back to you, and then Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. 121 laps into the CRC 300, and still a few questions to be answered. We'll return shortly for the complete of the race.
Exit Murray Carter. In fact, Rusty French was at the wheel from the race, blew something at the top of the course and just ambled back down here into the bottom area of the track, and that's the end of their race after having completed 123. The race leader continues to be car 41 RX-7 Barry Jones. Alan Jones having set up a commanding lead in the first 60-odd laps of the race, but let me tell you, our reports indicate that Barry Jones has just on the previous lap done a 59-second lap, while the second-placed car, George Fury in the Turbo Bluebird, did a 55.3. Now, the margin between first and second has been reduced. There we are, 58.5 was the last lap for Barry Jones. The leading margin has been reduced to a lap and 1.2 seconds. So you may as well say one. Now, there they are, both together on the track. And if George Fury gets by somewhere here in the next lap or two, he will have unlapped himself, so to speak, and be on the same lap as Barry Jones.
I think he's going to try that too. They swing through Honda Corner and come down on the run to Winfield. And here's number 55, George Fury, looking to the inside and taking the initiative.
Right. Now, with 30 laps to go, that's got to be the tactic for the two Bluebirds, because Fred Gibson is not all that far away as well, and they've just got to put the pressure on Barry Jones for the next 30-odd laps and see if it'll bring him unstuck.
That's going to require some very hard motoring now from George Fury if they hope to pick up that lap in the final 30 circuits of the CRC 300. Coming up behind Topfer in the Commodore, looking to maybe effect a pass here on the inside. Yes, he moves to the outside and allows now George Fury to take the inside initiative, and sneaking through with them, of course, goes Barry Jones. So Jones is now back on the tail of George Fury. That's about the distance between them. I think at this stage Barry Jones is more interested in conserving with the RX-7. Not too much distance between them as they head down to Winfield Corner again. There's Barry Jones, car number 41, the Darrell Lee West End Mazda entry. Just ahead of him, the Turbo Nissan, driven by George Fury, and driven very, very well indeed here today in the CRC race.
And there's about 40 seconds between George Fury and the third-placed car, the other Bluebird, driven by Fred Gibson. So Fred really would have to do something miraculous to get up there in contention at this stage, even with 20-plus laps to go. But this is an interesting situation here. Unfortunately for George Fury, there is nobody else at the moment in the near vicinity that can get into the fray and put any pressure on Barry Jones. That's really what he needs. He needs somebody else to come along and occupy Jones and give him a chance to eat up some distance.
Make no mistake, George Fury is trying very hard. Comes out of Honda Corner. Now heading down towards Winfield, probably 10 or 20 metres now. The distance between those two cars, the Turbo Nissan and of course the RX-7. Out of Winfield Corner, there's Fury. The next car he'll be approaching will be Brian Callahan in the Ford, number 47. Here he goes, and here comes our race leader going past our camera position on the front straight. Up Bitchapave Hill to the crest at Marlborough, and they'll drop down into Dunlop Loop. And increasing that just a little bit more is Fury rather, as he goes into Dunlop Loop. Well, it's been an astonishing performance from the Nissan Turbos here in the 300 today.
You've got to admire the effort that's gone on in one particular camp here today. Mike and I'm talking about Charlie O'Brien and Clive Benson-Brown in car 11, Soundwave's Disco Commodore. It's just gone past our commentary position and is going up over the top of Bitchapave Hill at the present time. They broke an axle early on in the race, and the car sat in the pits, and they worked on it for dear life while the other cars were probably churning off about 40 or 50 laps between them. But they've got that car back out on the track. I think Clive Benson-Brown is at the wheel, so they're 50 laps or more off the pace, but they're still out there and having a bit of a go because they want to try the car out and give it a bit of a run, because they've got important races to come, and it's vital that they get laps up on the car just to help them sort it out.
There's the clash that Peter Brock mentioned earlier about Gary Scott and the rapid rate that Alan Grice was closing. Well, Grice closed and has now managed to pass the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore and put a little bit of a gap between himself and the front of the 05 car as they go down into Winfield Corner.
There is, in fact, though, I think at least a lap in favour of 05 in actual positions in the race.
Perhaps even more than that.
Yeah.
But considering the problems, he's been doing a tremendous job, Alan Grice. Race leader still, of course, Barry Jones. Second place being held down by number 55, George Fury. The gap between them about 45.5 seconds. And as you know, anything can happen in a motor race. We're not trying to put the hex on poor Barry Jones and Alan Jones, but the number of times you see someone with a big lead build up only to have a tyre start to deflate and a quick late pit stop. Who knows? It's never over until the checkered flag.
Well, since Fury unlapped himself, he's picked up another 8 to 10 seconds. I tell you what, he's doing pretty well, and the time has not run out by any means. 25 laps, in fact 24 laps to go for the two leading cars at the present time. And there's still a chance. It just depends on how well Barry Jones holds this RX-7 together from here to the checkered flag.
Into Winfield corner, Barry Jones, our race leader, now takes the short straight to Wonderlick turn, onto CRC straight away, and once again the run up Bitchapave Hill. The loneliest part of the race now. Jones really knows, as long as he can keep Fury in sight and see out the remaining 20 or 25 circuits of the CRC race.
Well, he's picking up about a second or touch over a second per lap, and obviously that's not going to be enough for him to close the gap between now and the finish. But if he works at it, he could go pretty close. There he is, George Fury. And the Bluebirds have really, as we've said several times, come good with a vengeance here at this CRC meeting at Amaroo Park.
Still continuing to open that gap up a little. George Fury to Winfield corner. Through Winfield and now along again to Wonderlick corner, CRC straight. There he goes, our second place driver in the CRC 300. That's George Fury, Nissan Turbo. And there's the gap back to our race leader, keeping in mind that Fury is trying to come from behind and erode away at the lead that Barry Jones has. Over the loop and now down into Dunlop.
Yes, well, he's going to see a few more sunsets between now and the end of the race, and over the top of that hill it gets pretty vicious at this time of the afternoon. Amaroo Park, but I would say that he's going to be so elated with the way things are going for him at this stage of the race. He's not going to be too concerned about anything else intruding on his moment of joy. Let's hope it holds out for him to the checkered flag, as we've said. George Fury may have other ideas. We'll be back to find out.
Wonderlick corner at the beginning of pit straight is one part of the circuit where cars corner very hard. And look at all that broken rubber on the outside. Not only is it on the track, but it's being thrown over the fence and lying here on the road itself. Look, these pieces of rubber are all from the treads of tyres. And if you wonder what a tyre looks like, this is from Brian Callahan's car. That's what the high-speed cornering in the CRC 300 is doing to these racing slicks. It is literally melting the rubber, see? Peels it off when they corner hard with the great weight of these cars, and strips like that are being flung over the fence, and they're showering on us. We're enjoying, in these hot conditions, a lovely shower. Unhappily, it's black rubber.
Thank you, Evan Green.
Remind me not to lend him my towel.
Well, there's number 19 with a slight problem getting around that corner.
Greg Topfer and Ken Matthews driving that car, the Commodore, from Citizen Watches. In fact, where are they on the track? They're not doing too badly, you know. I mean, they're about 3 laps down on the leader, but for a combination that, while individually they've got a lot of experience in other classes of racing, together in this caliber of event, haven't been seen to have great advantage before. They're doing very well. In fact, in about 7th, 8th position in the race. There's the leader, Barry Jones.
136 laps of 155 have been completed, and looking good out there in front is Barry Jones. Be an interesting win by the time it goes into the record book, providing everything stays together for the remaining 20 or so circuits. Alan Jones and Barry Jones. Good combination for this year's CRC 300. They've totally dominated. Certainly the first segment of the race with Alan Jones stretching his lead to the point that when he pulled into the pit area, he gave his co-driver Barry Jones an advantage that Phil Alexander couldn't take to any advantage himself. 41 is our race leader. That's the Jones boys. Second place being held down by George Fury, 55. The second of the Nissan Turbos, 56, driven by Fred Gibson. Alan Grice is in 4th place in car number 4. Larry Perkins and Gary Scott in 05 are in 5th place, and 35 Phil Alexander is in 6th place. It's the Phillips Ray Morris scoring service, bringing us up to date on lap 137.
47 seconds between cars 41 and 55 present time. So George Fury really not having much success in reducing that gap any further in these concluding stages. In fact, he did have it down to about 43, so he's lost a second or two in the last couple of laps, driving for all it's worth. But obviously, Barry Jones has got plenty up his sleeve in the RX-7. He's pushing it not to the limit, but he's contenting himself to keep a pretty good space between himself and Fury in the Bluebird. And you mentioned about Jones and Jones combining so well here today in this race, Mike. They're going to have to start asking themselves some very serious questions from the moment the checkered flag drops about combining again.
Yes. Well, that's some interesting news that we've received about Alan Grice.
Yes, having a white Christmas in midwinter.
Yes. We believe that Alan Grice's fire extinguisher, which of course it's mandatory that all the drivers must carry in the cockpit, has defoamed itself inside the car.
All he needs now is a pavlova and he'll be in business.
Alan Brown, of course, is Alan's co-driver. Evan Green is handy to the action and has Alan for a couple of comments.
Alan Grice in car for 4th place, but having all sorts of problems. First it was damaged steering. Now Alan Brown, he's got some problem inside the car. What did he radio you? What message has he sent?
Well, actually, the message came through on the radio. He said, we've broken something in the car. I'm not sure what it is. Then all of a sudden, he found out what it was. It was the fire extinguisher. It's just blown up and its foam's gone everywhere. But he said, well, keep going. So he's still driving around like that.
Okay, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan. Well, it's hard to know what else could go wrong with Alan Grice. He's got a white Christmas exploding inside the car. His co-driver, of course, went off the circuit after they'd laid all their plans out with soft compound tyres and a short fuel load. So Gricey's done it the hard way right off the back of the field today.
Yep, he came from last place, as we've said, when he took over on lap 21 from Alan Brown. Came from last place in a field of 20 and is now in 4th place, admittedly 2 laps down on the race leader, Barry Jones, in car 41. But a remarkable performance, particularly with the car full of fire extinguisher foam.
55, George Fury, not that far behind. Alan Grice trying to put another lap on the Recar Commodore driver. Coming down again behind number 19, the Cullen entry, the Commodore. Well, that left Fury very short on room. However, Fury now finds an inside pass and comes right up behind Alan Grice, takes him under brakes as they go down to Winfield Corner. Very agile indeed, the little Nissan Turbo. Forced to take a little sideways bite of the wheel, and Grice has always hit him and spinning backwards into the wall. He hits the Armco and clips him on the way back through. That was bad luck indeed. There's our second place driver who's gone off the course, and the Nissan Turbo is shattered down there after hitting the Armco.
He did take a very brave line, you must admit, for this stage of the race, and being in 2nd place, he really didn't need to get into a dice of that sort with Alan Grice, I don't think. But he took a very, very brave line indeed, and it did not come off.
Well, one of the marshals very quick cross to make sure that George Fury is okay. Yellow flag's being waved. There's Brian Callahan coming through. We'll go trackside now to Evan Green, who's very close to the action there.
Please don't go away. Okay, George Fury, what happened?
Well, I don't think he played very fair, actually. I passed him fair and square, and I think he hit me in the back.
You're okay? You okay?
Yes, that's it.
You look a bit shaken up. Did you get a physical shock, or is the emotional effect that's hitting you now?
Well, I think we're doing rather well, so I would have liked to have kept doing it, and I don't like to bend the car. So I'm not very happy. Thank you, Gil.
George Fury walking away from me now, going back to report to team manager Howard Marsden. A very upset fella. You heard when he say it all. Back to you again, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan.
With respect to
is George Fury.
To George Fury's opinion, Mike, I don't see that Grice really had much choice in the situation he was in.
He used a very wide line to go into that corner.
And then cut very sharply in, and I think put Grice in a situation where either he had to run off the track on the inside or keep going in a straight line, which he was entitled to do.
So George Fury's wife a little upset about how it's all turned out. Alan Grice, certainly not the type of driver who at the last moment or in the closing stages of a race would come underneath and dislodge the 2nd place driver, but at the same time their cars did appear to have brief contact, but whether or not It was Fury coming across the front of
Here
Grice.
it is again. You see Fury takes him.
Used right out from the wall and is cutting in from the wall.
Comes across very sharply.
Grice is almost into the turn, and that's where the hit is now.
Yep, just there. Touch, and out goes the rear end.
Now you'll notice what happens now is that Grice continues and now finds that Datsun gets up on two wheels here. At one stage I thought it was going to get on its side and roll over. Now Grice is on the brakes and just happens to clip it as it goes through, and the car bounces off the wall and then straight into the path of two other cars, the Citizen Watch's car that also knocks the back.
And Fred Gibson, who got through unscathed, as it turned out. So the other Bluebird, in fact, now is in second place on the track, although a lap down on Barry Jones, who's been out there missing all that drama, although, of course, he's bypassed the wreckage of George Fury's car as he went past, and he knows that there's been a drama of some proportions on that section of the track.
Might go back trackside to Evan Green for a recap and perhaps another chat with George Fury.
George Fury, when you came in for your pit stop, Howard Marston said you were cranky because you're giving you an orange juice. Now you've got an orange juice, but you're still cranky.
Yes, I'm afraid. I thought we were going at a steady pace, and that's what I planned to do all the way. We're doing about 56, 5, 6s in it. And I just passed Gricey there, and the next corner after I passed him, he dinged me in the back and spun me out. I don't think that's, you know, we probably got a full lap on him, I don't know. So I don't think that's playing it very fair. But that's motor racing, I suppose. And I'm still learning, Kevin. Evan.
You've done a lot of railing. How does racing compare with it?
Well, I was having a great deal of fun until this happened, but with only 10 laps to go or so, I don't even know what place we were in, but it was good fun anyway.
Go and have a word to Howard Marsden and find out just how well you were getting on. George Fury, who really was putting an outstanding drive. Bad luck, but the message for the Sandown 400, the Castrol 400 and Bathurst is clear. These Datsuns are the cars to watch. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan Green. Well, George still quite convinced there that that Grice maybe ran into the back of him, but you can take that both ways. You've either got to take the fact that the driver would deliberately do that, or if they did touch, if it was accidental, leaving, which it appeared to be, not wanting to take the part of any one driver in that incident, but George was using an awfully wide line from the wall to the inside, and Grice had already recovered to try and, I wouldn't say effectively pass him again, but they came into contact. But bad luck indeed for George Fury. That has taken him out of the ball game, and of course now moves Fred Gibson up into second place in the race. Third place would be held down by Alan Grice. Fourth place now, of course, by Larry Perkins and Scott in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore 05. And back behind them is Phil Alexander in car number 35, the Mazda RX-7.
And there are only 10 cars surviving in this race after 146 laps. There's the leaders board. Barry Jones appearing over the top of the hill. First place, Fred Gibson. Second, Grice. Third, Larry Perkins in fourth spot.
Also moving up is Jim Richards. That puts Jim up into the top 6. They've completed 146 of 155 laps. And the whole of Sydney is going to be talking about the Jones boys. That's Barry Jones out in front leading the second half of this race, and the former world driving champion Alan Jones, who set up such a big lead in the number 41 car from the time that the green flag fell.
Alan Jones driving the first 62 laps of the race. Barry Jones taking over at that stage and doing it well in the concluding stages of the CRC 300.
Welcome back to Amaroo Park Raceway, and problems for Jim Richards and the John Player BMW limping back towards the pits. Presently placed 6th in the race, probably talking on his two-way back to Frank Gardner.
I don't think there'll be any urgency about the conversation, because whatever he's got, it's terminal.
Coming down to Winfield Corner, and they will probably come into the pit area now. Bad luck indeed for Jimmy Richards. He's fought a game race, started out of position number 12, worked his way into the top 6, And I think it's going to try and lip around and keep the laps up.
Oh. I think he changed. He was definitely going to pit, I think, there, but he's changed his mind.
There's the crew waving to him.
He won't get up the hill, I don't think. Oh, he's going to try. He's going to keep circulating and try and complete the race with only, well, 5 laps to go for the leader, but that would make it about 8 laps to go for Jim, because he's 3 laps down on Barry Jones at the present time. The RX-7 Mazda, Alan Jones, Barry Jones at the wheel, with a commanding lead at the present time, a lap plus on Fred Gibson in the surviving Turbo Bluebird. We saw, of course, just a few laps back, the exit of George Fury in a brush with Alan Grice in Wonderlick Corner. Evan Green has the reasons for this crawl by Jimmy Richards. Let's go to Evan.
Jim Richards in car 31, the BMW, running in 6th place, is in trouble. The pits here, Frank Gardner and his team don't know what the trouble is, but they've told him to stay out. There are just 2 laps to go, so Jim Richards is going to try and survive these last couple of laps of the CRC 300. Bad luck for him so late in the race.
Well, I don't know about 2 laps to go. We better check our count, but as far as I see, it's 4 laps to go now, and well, 4 laps for the leader. And we'll keep our eye out for the last lap board. It'll be coming out very shortly. Second place car there is, as I said, the surviving Turbo Bluebird, driven by Fred Gibson, moving into second place with the demise of George Fury in the brush with Alan Grice. And the Bluebirds both performing remarkably well up to that point, and Gibson's car continuing to do so. And as Howard Marsden said when speaking to Evan Green, just showing the other competitors, both the RX-7s and the big cars, the Commodores and the Falcons, that the Turbo Bluebirds really have arrived on the scene, and whilst they haven't run any major long-distance races yet, they're really confident that they're just going to get better and better as time goes on and the distances increase towards the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October 3. That remains to be seen. Of course, we've got plenty of racing between now and then, particularly with the Castrol 400 coming up at Sandown, which you'll be seeing on the 7 network. There's Gricey, just coming through now, car 4, the Recar Commodore, and we've mentioned the remarkable performance that he's put up with a car that's not handling well after an early brush that took Alan Brown out of the race after 21 laps. Grice took over at that stage at the rear of the field that comprised 20 cars, and has since moved up now into 3rd spot, although 2 laps down on race leader Barry Jones. And of course he was involved in that very controversial incident about 8-9 laps ago with George Fury. 05 is the next car on the track. There's Alan Grice going through, as I said, in 3rd place, 4th place being held down by the Larry Perkins, Gary Scott. Marlborough Holton, the other team Commodore, Gary Scott at the wheel at the moment. Larry Perkins having driven the first half of the race. There it is, Gary Scott, and a creditable performance again by that combination. Alan Grice just ahead of that, but Peter Brock not driving here today, but is present to observe how Larry and the boys are handling this car, because they want to get their combinations right with the longer distance races, including Bathurst coming up, and Perkins and Scott between them have really proved that whilst they're outgunned on the day by the RX-7s and by the Bluebirds, they've still got a lot of fight left. Car 35 is in 5th position on the track. Last lap board is out. Last lap board is out. As we see car 35, Ron Gillard, has just gone through there, and there is the race leader, and I think we better stick with him from here on, because they deserve really all the plaudits. Barry Jones and Alan Jones. Alan Jones driving the first stint for 62 laps, setting up a commanding lead, and then handing over to Barry Jones, now circulating around the Amaroo Park circuit here on the outskirts of Sydney on the last of 155 laps. He has a lap plus on second place getter Fred Gibson, and coming down now into Winfield Corner to the plaudits of the crowd. They stand and cheer as he comes round. It's been a very great performance. There's Alan Jones with a smile on his face, and why wouldn't he have, because this car has performed amazingly well today. And there goes the checkered flag for Barry Jones, and look at the delight as he shakes the fist out the window. A fist of victory, salute for the crowds, and a fist of threat perhaps for the bigger cars. with the longer distance races, including Bathurst, to come. Pretty good performance, eh?
Tremendous performance from Barry Jones. There's Alan Jones, who I think would be very happy, and he's down there with Evan Green.
Well, a win at last in touring cars, Alan Jones. How does it feel?
Oh, obviously fantastic. Really good, and I'm very happy for Barry because, you know, he's been playing with Mazdas and working on them for so long, and he's wanted to win this race very badly, so it's fabulous.
A man in tears behind you is his father, Bert Jones. You must be a proud man. Very much, very much so, yeah. Hard to find the words. We'll leave you alone. It's a great moment for you. Thanks, Evan. Great. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan Green. Well, Barry Jones and Alan Jones teamed together to win the 1982 CRC 300 at Amaroo Park Raceway today. Second place will go to Fred Gibson in the Turbo Nissan. And third place will go to the ever-battling Alan Grice in the Recar Commodore, number 4, after coming from the back of the field. There's Barry Jones completing his victory lap, about to move into the presentation area, probably the biggest win, or certainly the biggest win of his racing career, and what a driver to team with. That'll go down in the record books, the thing that was put together at the last moment. The Jones boys. Alan Jones walks towards the presentation area as Barry Jones grabs a checkered flag and says, "It feels too good to be out there. Let's go and do another lap." Ivan Stibbard, the secretary and race organiser here at Amaroo Park, and of course for the James Hardy 1000, walks up pit road with Alan Jones. And Alan Jones has been seeking a win in the touring cars for quite some considerable period. He's dominated the GT Sports Sedan National Championship this year, but he really wants to win Bathurst. He has a choice of cars, whether to go Ford or whether to go Mazda. Well, the Ford hasn't fired a wheel in competition, and the Mazda's come up a winner. The choice would seem fairly natural at this stage. Well, we have the presentation and words and reflections from the both Jones people, both Barry and Alan, coming up. We'll take a break and we'll return to Amaroo Park Raceway, where there's more exciting action to come.
We've probably said it 16 times today already, but I'll say it again. The whole town is talking about the Jones boys, and why not after the CRC Chemicals 300 here at Amaroo Park today. What a great victory for the West End Darrell Lee Mazda RX-7, driven by Barry Jones and Alan Jones. I think you'll all agree. What a great victory. Fantastic. How do you feel, champ?
Oh, I've had it. That's the longest but the best race I've ever run.
Who gave you a belt in the face?
I don't know. I'm not aware of it, actually. Have I got a belt in the face?
Well, it looks like it. Somebody's given you a king hit, but I would say that you wouldn't mind who hit you with what at the moment.
I probably copped a rock, but no, I don't mind. I'm wrapped. Thanks to Alan here, and Alan who got us a lead at the start, and our pit crew who did a terrific stop, and I was able to keep it up. We've won. That's what we come here for.
Judged on what I heard from both of you in pre-race discussions, talking to you, everything went so according to plan. I mean, it almost couldn't happen again that way, almost as if it was scripted.
Well, we've been looking for this race now for probably, well, since the last time I raced the car. It's been completely refurbished. I've teamed up with Alan Jones. We've done everything we could think. We've checked the car, we've rechecked it, we've triple-checked it, and then we checked it again just to be sure. And the car performed faultlessly, I'm glad to say. So you all better rush out and buy Mazdas, I think.
Alan, I know you've been asked this question several times today, and I'm going to ask it again in light of the checkered flag dropping on Barry as it did just now. This puts a lot of decisions, tough decisions, in your head in the next few weeks.
Oh, not really. I think that if Mazda gives us the sort of support and encouragement that we're looking for, it'll make my decision that much easier.
Yeah, brief and to the point, as always. Ron McLean, sales manager for CRC Chemicals, is here with the goodies, not only for the winners but the place getters. But let's start, obviously, with the winners. Ron McLean.
Thanks, Gary. On behalf of CRC Chemicals, Barry and Alan, I'd like to present you with the trophy, third year of the CRC 300, and it's nice to see a new name on it. So congratulations on our behalf, and we look forward to seeing you. Thanks very much. And I think the most important part, apart from the trophy, is one of the young ladies behind us has a cheque for $10,000, which makes the afternoon probably a little bit worthwhile.
Come on, Angela. I think she wanted to keep it for herself.
on behalf of CRC Chemicals, the cheque for $10,000 for first. Congratulations, boys.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to make sure I thank my crew for this. I don't think I've ever thanked them before, but they've never worked so hard. So to Ray Hamnett, my father, my wife, and all the people that helped us get here, Darryl Lee Chocolates, West End Mazda, thank you very much.
I'd just like to reiterate Barry's sentiments regarding the team, and I'd also like to thank CRC very much, because it's companies like that that make these meetings possible. Thank you.
Now, Evan Green is here with me, and Evan, if you'd like to come in at this stage, we've got, apart from the winners, we had some great drives in the race, and of course we had some good performances by other cars, and with the second and third place getters, whoa, there we go. Look out, Alan Jones is about to do, he's about to do the Grand Prix Formula One trick with the champagne, and I don't think anybody will mind too much getting a bath in the contents of that bottle after a great victory here today. But second and third, Evan Green.
Fred Gibson, second place in the turbocharged Nissan Bluebird. Where are you, Fred? A great drive, I'm sure everyone will agree.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you very much. It was pretty easy, really, I think. We were quite happy with the car, Evan. As I said before we started, today was the first day the car's done a long-distance race. I'll give it a bit of a rest towards the in the middle of the race, when I thought, well, hang on a minute, I better get stuck in it again. I'll give it bugger towards the finish. And it went all day, didn't miss a beat, and we're tickle pink with it, really. And it's looking good for all long-distance races.
There's a big cheque there about to be presented to you. Let's get the very pleasant part of this ceremony over. $7,000 for second place.
On behalf of CRC Chemicals, Fred, congratulations, a wonderful performance. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank CRC for putting on this race. I think it's been a wonderful race. It's been a wonderful race for us anyway. We've lost one motor car. We can soon build another one. I'd like to thank Nissan Motor Company. I'd like to thank all the boys at Nissan who have sort of really put a lot of work in this effort since last year's Bathurst. We've had a lot of problems. We sorted them out today, and well done, boys. Thank you very much.
In third place, after a staggering comeback, Alan Grice for the Alan Brown team. Now, Alan, when you took over the car, you were running about dead last.
Yeah, but I was there last year, same place of my own doing. So not. Alan is one of the most experienced drivers around, and he just had a bad day. Had a bloke run into him, and that's the way it was. I had an interesting sort of a run. I had the fire extinguisher attack me in the vitals, which was not terribly interesting. And I'd like to congratulate the Datsun team on their performance. We had an unfortunate touchdown there. I think they deserve to be second and third today.
A cheque for $5,000 in the name of Alan Brown, the team entrant. Ron?
Alan and Alan, congratulations on the performance. A magnificent job done as well. Thanks very much for your performance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, CRC, and I hope we see you next year, but we're 2 places up.
Gary Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Evan. Well, it's been a great day's racing, I'm sure you'll agree, and as Alan Grice said, being back in last place in a field of 20 is no fun, but I think the field of 20 that we had here today provided just about the maximum amount of action that you can expect out of any motor race, and I think once again thanks to Ron McLean and thanks to the efforts of the Australian Racing Drivers Club, the CRC Chemicals 300 motor race has been a phenomenal success. By the way, the Krondorf Champagne people wanted me to tell Barry Jones that he won the award for driver of the meeting and best driver of the meeting, so there's a dozen of those for him as well. For Channel 7 viewers, don't go away. We've got more action to come from Amaroo Park. 8 laps is the distance for this race, the Stallion Stable Goodyear Group E Production Series. Round 5, this is for series production cars, standard motor cars, and this is a man who can't be beaten. Stephen Brook in the Perrier Mazda RX-7. He went down to Calder last week and was beaten by Peter Fitzgerald and didn't like the experience. Just didn't have the power. He and his team have worked on the car during the week. They've tuned it properly. It's now going, and in practice yesterday he broke the lap record by something like 0.3 of a second, so he was quick. Cam Warner is alongside him in the Nissan 280ZX. He was 0.6 of a second slower in practice. On the second row, Peter McKay in the Penthouse 280ZX and David Selden in the Volvo. Peter Fitzgerald running his RX-7 on old tyres, unfortunately. Couldn't do any better than the third row of the grid, and has Gary Walton in a TR7 alongside him. Gerard Murphy in an Alfetta. Alan Fender in an RX-7. Then we have John Giddings in a Nissan Skyline, John Phillips in a Cortina. That's the field of 18 cars. The flag is about to drop. The distance, 8 laps.
off and racing and getting away very quickly there was Cam Warner, and the lead momentarily. Now it's Stephen Brook who races up on the inside to take the lead away. Peter Mackay in the Datsun moving up into third place. David Selden in the Volvo there into fourth at the moment, or on the outside of Mackay. That's where they came together at the last outing here in the Stay in Stable Goodyear event. Okay, through Dunlop Loop for the first time, and the field is intact, and there's Stephen Brook in the Perrier RX-7 leading down towards Mazda corner, and of course Cam Warner still in second place, and that great scrap going on with Mackay and also David Selden.
Looked like Peter Fitzgerald in the RX-7 and the Volvo of David Selden side by side all the way down the straight. They've now broken apart with Fitzgerald just a little bit in front, Selden in the Volvo having to give way to him, but a great scrap going on. In the meantime, the leader is the man who has won the series, Stephen Brook. He can't be beaten, he has so many points. But he'd like to finish in the correct way, which is to win the last race of the series, and that's the way he's starting. He's out in front, made a good start, and he's still leading Cam Warner and Peter Mackay in the two Nissan 280 ZXs. And a pretty crowded back straight behind them as they go across the start-finish line. 7 laps to go.
Well, Stephen Brook's certainly been the dominant man since this class of racing was reintroduced, Evan.
Yes, he has. A great driver. He won the Formula Ford Championship a couple of years ago, and then went into the Al Sud last year for Perrier to run in this class, series production. Won that through a string of class wins. Moved up to the RX-7 and has been winning races outright fairly consistently through the year. But what a scrap going on for second place behind the two 280 ZXs. Cam Warner and Peter Mackay, they're close behind. Stephen fairly well clear. Drives very neatly. He'll be partnering former world champion Denny Holm at Bathurst in the James Hardy 1000 in October. He'll be driving the second of the BMW 635s. So a nice big move up for him into that sort of class.
I think reward for his ability and his consistency, certainly in this class.
Well, he was 0.6 of a second faster than Cam Warner yesterday in practice. I think that's being reflected at the moment with the lead that he has established over Warner. Peter Mackay back in third place, 100 metres, probably then back to Fitzgerald, who's been displaced there by David Selden in the Volvo, coming once again over the top of Marlborough and down into Dunlop Loop.
And a good scrap going on behind these cars as well, which we'll get onto in a moment. In the meantime, that's Peter Mackay coming third in the 280 ZX. And the lead, oh, he's got sideways, but he held it. That was good driving. He went up onto the curbing and went sideways in a way that suggested we were going to see him actually exit the race, but he controlled it beautifully, brought it back under control. So you can be sure that Stephen Brook is trying very hard when he does those sorts of things.
But that really gave the heart a flutter there when he lost it.
Yes, he's telling himself, now calm down, calm down. You know, I've still got a big lead, I can't be beaten. Just take it easy. But he was going very hard, sliding the car hard there, and had to use a lot of skills to hold on to the car as he came round. In fourth place is Alan Fender, and there's a great battle going on just behind this group, about to come into that corner. We'll follow these through over the start-finish line. Warner and Mackay in pursuit. And here come the other group, passing going on right into one lick, as you can see, as Selden brings the Volvo through ahead of the group. Now it's David Selden, just leading Gary Walden in the Triumph TR7. And they're having a bit of a scrap. Two unlikely cars to be racing as closely as this. A Volvo versus a sports car, but that's the way it is. Just going in front is Alan Fender in the Mazda RX-7, who really has done well to bring his car into fourth place. Then it's the Volvo of David Selden, trying very hard.
Isn't he ever?
Fully handfuls of opposite lock there.
And Gary Walden rather wishing there was a toe ball on the back. He can just hook his nose on the front and get the quick way round, because there's no doubt that David Selden is pressing that Volvo in a way that very few Volvos are driven.
Down into Honda corner, we're staying with David Selden in the Volvo, and coming up to challenge him, of course, is Gary Walden in the TR7. And here's Walden now thinking about an inside, now moves to the outside, and will probably cut back again on the inside as they come out of this corner.
Peter Fitzgerald, in the meantime, who started up about the fifth row, has dropped back. He's got old tyres. He just didn't have the right rubber and is forced to use the tyres he used at Calder last week, and they're pretty well worn, and he's had to back off pace because of that. But these fellows are going hard. Fender is through. Then it's David Selden in the Volvo and Gary Walden in the TR7. And behind them is Gerard Murphy in the Alfa Romeo, the Alfetta GTV, right behind that pair. Selden, it's the sign rider, Alan Fender, who goes through. Then it's David Selden in the Volvo who chases him. Gary Walden getting a first-class view of a wagging tail there. Gerard Murphy just coming into view behind that pair.
all drivers in the race, of course, running on Goodyear NCT tyres, as they have since the commencement of the series.
Well, they certainly served Stephen Brook well there. But 2.5 laps back, he could have been right out of business. Almost went out of control. But as you said, Evan, a good piece of... Look at this.
He's been watching those NASCAR films. But
There
here
we
it
go.
comes.
I don't think he's got the line unless David Selden gives him an extraordinary amount of room, but he's not going to do that. He goes for the line that he wants. You can see Gerard Murphy behind him in the Alpha. He's not very far back. A man who sells cars and tries to prove the point by racing them, and that's fairly strong evidence of proof of the product you're selling. That's Gerard Murphy just behind this man, Gary Walton. Walton was the one who won this car in the Village Grand Prix competition some years ago, and has been racing very successfully ever since.
He's got good use out of this car, hasn't he?
He's rather which David Selden is thinking, I wish he'd taken up Space Invaders or something.
Keep in mind that most of the drivers do, in fact, drive these cars to the circuit.
I saw David Selden driving out here yesterday for practice out along the Epping Highway.
Selden has opened up quite a large gap over Walton. He got a full car length clear, but Walton will close behind. Oh, he may have seen just the tail end of Fender's RX-7 going very wide, and that has let the other two cars come very close. The leader's going through, and still Stephen Brook in the Perrier RX-7 in front of Cam Warner, and then Peter McKay in the pair of Nissan 280ZXs. They're the leading three, and then quite a long gap back to the battle we've been following. Alan Fender is in front of that group in 4th place in the Mazda RX-7 with the Volvo and the Triumph right behind. In the meantime, back to the leader, and still going hard, still sliding, still making the fullest use of all the grip offered by these new Goodyear tyres is Stephen Brook. Pressing the car very hard, doesn't make a mistake this time though, going up and over the curve, which really threw him out of kilter a couple of laps ago, holds the car nicely under control, going very fast. It's hard to get a true idea of how quickly these cars are going, just sitting at home like you are watching this. But he's going hard. Imagine if you were alongside him, the tail being flung out there, going so fast through the corner, Australia would be drowned by your screams. Well, Stephen Brook, head pressed forward in a typical fashion. Oh, a bit of a spin there. You can see
20, that's Alan Springett.
Yes, the TR7. He just went wide there. Picking up his skirts, getting going again, and letting those cars which were behind him go through. Across now with 1 lap to go.
The Perrier RX-7 of Stephen Brook still holding pride of place, and then coming the two 280ZXs, the first of Cam Warner, followed by the Marantz penthouse entry of Peter McKay.
Be a great way, Gary, for Stephen Brook to finish the series if he can win the race. In the meantime, a bit further back, car 20, the car we saw spin, that was the TR7 of Alan Springett, having a bit of a tussle with one of the Cortinas, probably John Phillips in car 9, the 6-cylinder Cortinas, which are a little bit back in the field. We haven't been seeing too much of them.
Yeah, it's only fitting for Stephen Brook to run out a winner in the final race because he's, as we've said, since the category was reintroduced 2 seasons back, has been the absolutely dominant driver, and he's really, firstly with the little Alpha Sud and then stepping into the RX-7 earlier this season, has really shown the opposition in most races pretty much a clean pair of heels.
The final corner, looking good for the checkered flag. Drifting out of that turn, coming in to take the flag is Stephen Brook, and the Perrier RX-7 takes the Stallion Stable Goodyear Group E Production Series round and the series here today at Amaroo Park with some splendid driving.
Cam Warner and Peter McKay followed, but look at the battle going on for 4th place as we just hovered to see these cars, the Volvo, the TR7 cutting the grass, Alan Fender wagging the tail. He'll go across in the RX-7, then the Volvo, then the Triumph, then Gerard Murphy in the Alfa Romeo. That's the way the next 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th cars came across the line in the Stallion Stable Goodyear Group E Production Series round 5.
Well, Stephen Brook, Cam Warner, Peter McKay, 1, 2, 3 in the final round of the Stallion Stables Goodyear Production Series here at Amaroo Park. But I think we mentioned through the race several times just how completely dominant Stephen Brook has been, not only through the series this year, but since this category of racing was reintroduced last season. And break the lap record again today, just for good measure. Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't know that I've been that dominant. I think Cam and Peter might argue about that a little bit. But after Peter Fitzgerald beat me down at Calder last weekend, I realised that I had a little bit more horsepower to come from somewhere, and we found that. And all along I thought it was the Datsuns that putting the power down a bit better, but it's been me being down a little bit on horsepower. So today was a little bit easier.
Well, Christine Davis is here on behalf of Stallion Stables and Goodyear with the goodies for you.
Thank you very much, Gary. This is our last meeting of the series this year, and we've seen some exciting racing and also driving from everyone here. I think you've had a very good year this year, Stephen. I think you've had a great year. We've got some prizes for you. On behalf of Goodyear and Stallion Stables, the haircutters for men, firstly, we have this terrific hat for you. There you go.
Oak leaf clusters.
Yes, you're a general now. This is our invitation, which invites you down to any of our hair salons where you can get yourself a great haircut, and also this beautiful trophy here.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Christine, thank you very much. Don't go away. I know you've got a couple of people you want to thank, and I want to talk to you a little bit further in a moment, but it has been very successful for you, and you must be tremendously pleased with the way you've been driving and the way the car's been going.
Yes, very pleased with the team and Perrier, and I hope we can continue the success next year.
What about coming up in the year? I mean, the big news, of course, we've known for some time now, is the drive with the BMW at Bathurst.
Yes, well, it's a very good drive, and it'll be very hard to beat a team such as the JPS BMW team. They certainly have all the experience in the world, and I think probably one of the most experienced teams up there, so I'm really looking forward to that.
After, and as you say, the other boys might argue about your domination of production racing, but what's in store in production racing for you next season, or from now on?
Well, hopefully with Perrier, TAA, Goodyear, Stallion Stables, and the rest of the people that have given us great support, we'll be back next year to beat the Datsuns again.
Stephen Brook, winner of the Stallion Stables Goodyear Production Racing Series here at Amaroo Park once more.
Cars lining up now for the Coca-Cola Bottlers Formula Ford scratch race. The distance 5 laps, about 10 runners in this, and Don Bretlin in the Van Diemen has pole position with 55.2 seconds. Bruce Connolly starting alongside of him on the grid. The Galloway, 55.3. Warwick Rooklyn, who's been a model of consistency at Amaroo this season, in the Moor, on a 55.5, and Thomas Mazzera on 55.5 also. So a very competitive field. About 10 starters, the distance of the race 5 laps.
Next man on the grid is Gary Tully. In fact, surprised to see him back there. Qualifying time 56 seconds. He's been a little more prominent in earlier races through the season.
He, in fact, leads the point score for this Coca-Cola Series and is the leader in the TAA National Series. But he's way back in car number 5. There he is there on the 3rd row of the grid. Only a small field, as you can see, and the distance is 5 laps.
But with Bretlin, Rooklyn and Tully in particular, it promises to be a desperate battle. Flag is up. There they go, away in the Formula Ford scratch race, and up the hill the first time. Car 2, Don Bretlin, spears straight to the lead ahead of Bruce Connolly. That's the way they came off the front row of the grid. But look at them coming up from the rear. By gee, there's not going to be much between these as they come over the top.
Big challenge here for the lead from Connolly, but Bretlin still holds the lead as they go through Dunlop Loop for the first time and now move down towards Mazda Corner. Oh, and he's gone sideways off the racetrack and up the bank.
And will he be glad that they cleared that embankment away from there, or else he would have had a very expensive shuffle. Instead, he's back on the track, a bit embarrassed and at the tail of the field, but still in one piece. And so Connolly, who started from the front row of the grid, has to do it all over again. Bretlin's in front, it should be Rooklyn behind him, the young driver. Mixture of age in the form of the experienced Don Bretlin in the lead, and some young chargers having a go to try and make up ground on him.
Coming along the short straightaway down to Camelco Corner. We throw them back once again onto CRC straightaway now with Don Bretlin, number 2, leading the race. Warwick Rooklyn moving up very smartly through the pack.
Thomas Mazzera in 3rd place as they go up the hill for the 2nd time. 1 lap and a bit completed, and over the top once more Gary Tully hanging in there behind them. In about a lot of smoke there from
Rooklyn braking very hard. He tried an inner line which was fairly desperate and then braked hard and the brake locked on. And Mazzera, the young Czechoslovakian driver who really has been going sensationally well, closed up on him, and he now is in very close 3rd place. You can see Mazzera now challenging Rooklyn, 2 youngsters there. The wise old head of Don Bretlin in the lead as he doesn't exactly drive like a wise old head, gets the wheel caught up on the inner curve there. Maybe the fact that they've cut away the embankment on Honda has given him new limits to his bravery. Went in a bit harder and had to tuck the wheel over the curb, but caught it pretty well, taking a wide line there, as you can see from that camera angle. They're going pretty close to the concrete. Not a lot of distance between the outer tyres there as they come around to complete the 2nd lap, and it's Don Bretlin in car number 2. Fastest in practice yesterday, still leading the race. Another spin there from the back of the field, car number 50, Scott Elson. Now, Scott started from the rear of the grid. He doesn't have second gear, and I suspect it's just a total lack of that extra gear in his car that caused him to spin then. He was caught between first and third, had nowhere to go but spun it, and the youngster is in pursuit way back in his Rent, car number 50.
On the back of the circuit once more, and Bretland has opened up quite a commanding lead at this stage of the race over Warwick Brooklyn, Thomas Mazera in third. David Stanley holding down fourth spot in an image of car 34. There he is, the yellow car. And I'm just trying to locate Gary Tully. We expected to see him make some sort of a run from his fifth position on the grid, but he's going backwards and is back at about 7th or 8th spot at the moment.
7th place, I think, according to our lap scorer here, is where Gary Tully is. He won at Sandown last week. Whether he has problems with the car, or whether it's just at Calder Road, or whether it's just the totally different nature of the circuit. You can hardly find two more differing circuits than Calder, with few corners and long straights, and a difficult course to do, but one